Shelley, welcome to Locked In. We're here at Spotify Studios. We have a very special guest with us, your husband, who we're going to hear about this whole love story after later in this episode. And he's coming on the show as well. You and I met at the NARP conference in Nashville this past year. I think you came up to me after I spoke and we connected, and we've been talking about doing this for a few months. So I'm glad we can make this happen.
I know, me too. Excited to be here.
Yeah, you have such an incredible story. I mean, your resume for someone that has been previously incarcerated is pretty good. I wish I had that resume.
Well, you've got a pretty impressive resume too, so.
Yeah, I still get weird looks. At least you could say you're a tech exec or, all these accolades. So yeah, it's pretty cool. But did you grow up in California?
Yes, born in Sacramento, born and raised in Sacramento, and my whole life, and grew up in the suburbs of Carmichael, and graduated high school in '96 in Carmichael. And very kind of boring, plain life in Sacramento.
Left.
Never left.
Wow.
Until I went to prison. Well, actually, no, I went to Louisiana for a little while with my ex-fiance. I lived there, tried to get clean for a little while, and then I ended up moving back. So.
Yeah, that was like me. Although I never went to a different state, I never left Danbury, Connecticut the whole time until I went to federal prison. I still have not lived anywhere else except Danbury, Connecticut until, aside from federal prison.
Right.
Which is why I always tell people I want to move to a big city soon.
Right.
Who did you grow up with? Was it, your mom, dad, any siblings?
Yeah, so my mom and dad, actually it was my real father left when I was around 6 months old, and he went into the military. And my mom met my stepdad, his name is Ron, shortly after, and they got married. And so he raised me, and he's all I've known as a father. And then they had a kid together, and so I have one sibling, half brother. His name's Miles. And yeah, we grew up. They were young. I think my mom gave birth that she was like 18 years old, married my dad. He was same age. So grew up super young parents, very poor. My parents were just, they also grew up, had toxic family, and it's just grew up poor as well. And so it was just passed down. I feel like it was just passed down, to my brother and I too.
What'd they do for work, your parents?
So my mom didn't work. We grew up on welfare. My dad was an electrician, but he didn't seem to be able to keep jobs very long. He was an addict and an alcoholic, and he was in and out of prison most of my life. And I think he got, I'm not even kidding, like 32 DUIs.
Wow.
I know. And so he was always in and out of jail, losing his job, and my mom would have to figure out how to provide for us while he was in jail. And she would use, and we'd go to the grocery store and get food stamps, and, I was always embarrassed by that. But the food would run out before her next, re-up on food stamps. And I just remember always like being hungry and only having like bread and sugar in the house, or bread and ketchup. I mean, it was just crazy growing up that way. But yeah, it was a crazy life.
Were there people like you in Sacramento? Like, did you have friends that had that same kind of like economic class, or no?
Yeah, so we always lived in like really ghetto apartments or ghetto areas. And so, yeah, the kids that I grew up around with, definitely same environment, same life. That's all we knew.
So you weren't really like the odd one out when you were in school and whatnot?
No.
Because whenever I hear like Sacramento, you think like, rich, or, at least from an East Coast person, like that people have money. I guess in California in general. That's just the way we grew up thinking that.
No, not at all. Grew up super, super poor. And I think a lot of it was, I think we would have done well had my dad not struggled with addiction and been in and out of prison. I think he would have done really well as an electrician. But every time he'd get a job, he'd end up losing it, because he ended up in jail with a DUI. So, and just my mom could never get ahead. Eventually, she got sick of being, poor and just struggling all the time and raising me and my brother basically by herself. And so she went back to school to get her degree and ended up getting a pretty good paying job at that time and was able to finally kind of dig herself out of that hole. But up until that point, it was a lot of struggle.
Did your mom ever sit down and, explain to your brother and yourself what was going on with your dad?
Yeah. So, well, she didn't tell us exactly what happened, but I remember one particular time where she took us down to the park and she sat us down on the park bench and she says, "Hey, I have to tell you guys something." And she says, "Your dad's in jail again." And I was kind of used to it. My brother's 3 years younger. I was kind of used to him being in and out of prison. I was, I don't know, maybe 8 years old at this time. So my brother was 5. And I just remember my brother just bawling, just breaking down. And then, it really affected him. And then he kind of got used to it, after he started getting a little bit older. And it was just like the norm, right? Oh, dad's in jail again. Okay. We know why. Whatever. We've got to keep living our life. And, but I think, what's interesting is like, and I didn't realize this until I got older, that I kind of blamed myself for my dad going in and out of prison, or in and out of jail or in and out of prison. Like, and I felt like if I could make my dad love me more, then he wouldn't go get in trouble and go to jail or go to prison. I really thought that. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you feel unloved yourself too?
Yes, especially by my mom. I really did. I don't remember as a child hanging out with her, just doing mother-daughter stuff. We kind of lived in a state of chaos, it seemed. And I always felt like she loved my brother more than me. She was more nurturing with him. She spent more time with him. And I felt, it's interesting because even though my dad was in prison most of my childhood, I felt more loved by him than I did my mom. Yeah.
Now, did you guys go to public high school, you and your brother?
Yeah. Public schools, elementary, junior high, high school. Yeah.
And what was that like in your area?
So my mom got us out of the hood, I guess you could call it, the poor area. And we ended up moving in with my great aunt. So she lived in Carmichael, which was, I don't know, like maybe lower middle class. So it wasn't as bad. We lived downtown Sacramento, but prior to that, I can't remember what area it was. But then we moved to Carmichael, and then I ended up going to elementary school and junior high and then high school. Basically stayed at my great aunt's majority of that time. I mean, there were times that we moved out and got a different place, but we always ended up moving back to her house. Thank God for her. If it wasn't for her, I don't know what we would have done. We probably would have ended up in a shelter because it was just really hard for my mom to try to raise us with no money and then not having the support from my dad. So,
Did you have any dreams or goals? Like, did you know what you wanted to be when you grew up?
I had no idea. I just, I don't know. I just, being around my dad, like when he would get out of prison, he was always trying to influence me to party with him. He wanted me to do drugs with him. He wasn't he was not like a father. He was like a friend. And he always wanted to be like the cool dad. And so one time he got out And my mom helped him get a place to live that was kind of down the street from where we lived. And she couldn't wait to get rid of us. And she's like, "You're going to live with your dad." And when we first moved in, he said, "The rule of the house is if you ever want to do any hard drugs, you have to bring them home and do them with me." I was like, so I never knew, all I knew is that I wanted to party, and I enjoyed that life. And I started hanging out with people that were like my dad and partiers. And so I started experimenting with drugs at a very young age and drinking and all of that. And had no goals, had no ambitions. Probably not until a little bit later, in my, mid 20s or early 20s, I think I started to, think about, okay, what else can I do with my life? But never had, and, maybe I did, but I just don't remember. But God, yeah, nothing that comes to mind that,
Did you ever wish that your parents were older? Like that you had the same parents, but just that they had you later in life?
Yes, 100%. Yeah, I think things would have been a lot different. But, at the same time, I know that everything happens for a reason. And I know that I grew up in the environment I grew up in because I was meant to, and it's helped create and shape the person that I am today. And had I not grown up with them, at that age, in that environment, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Did you ever think that because of your dad's history with drugs and prison that you would follow suit? Was that ever a thought?
No, I had no idea. I think that I was scared. It made me scared to go to prison because my dad would tell me the craziest stories about prison. And I was like, oh my God, I never want to go to prison.
What's one you remember that he used to tell you?
He said that in the 80s, they would put these magazines, and they would tie them with rope around their stomachs and their sides, and they put the magazines all around their abdomen, so that they wouldn't get, in case somebody tried to shank them. I was like, what?
You're just a young kid hearing these stories.
Yeah, it was wild. And he'd tell me about fights on the yard and how they would hide, weapons, and it was just crazy. Yeah, he had been in multiple fights. There was riots or race, where the races were, fighting against each other, and he had to be a part of it. And if you didn't, then you would get dealt with by your own race. I was just like, oh my God, I never want to deal with that ever.
Was he a violent type of guy, or was he just
No, he wasn't really violent. Although he's been in fights, but I wasn't a violent guy at all, by any means, yeah.
Hey, Locked In listeners, let me ask you something. What's tougher, doing time in a 6x8 prison cell or trying to get enough protein in your diet without choking down chalky shakes? I've been hitting the gym hard lately. Seriously, I might as well start charging rent with how much time I spend there. But after a workout, I need real nutrition to fuel my gains, and that's where Orgain's 30-gram complete protein shake comes in. No added sugar, all 9 essential amino acids, and best of all, they actually taste good. I used to dread drinking protein shakes. Most taste like they came straight from a prison kitchen. But Orgain changed the game. Their shakes are smooth, delicious, and don't leave that weird aftertaste. Plus, they keep me full, which is a crucial when I'm grinding all day. In fact, I love them so much that I use this insane 30% off promo to stock our entire studio. That's right, every time someone comes through for an interview, they see our fridge loaded with Orgain shakes. It's the only thing keeping my guests from raiding my snacks, and you all know we have a ton of snacks here at the Locked In studio if you've been a former guest on the show. And here's the best part, it's so easy. No mixing powders, no messy prep, just grab, shake, and go. Whether you're on the way to the gym, rushing to work, or just trying to make better choices, Orgain has you covered. They even have a great dairy-free option for anyone that's practicing vegan options. So do yourself a favor, head to Orgain.com/Ian Bick and use code Ian Bick for 30% off your order. That's 30% off, but only when you use my code Ian Bick. One last time, go to Orgain.com/Ian Bick and use code Ian Bick for 30% off. I hope you enjoy Orgain just as much as I do. Now let's get back into today's episode.
Now, what about you? How would your friends from high school describe you at that time period?
Like a party girl. I had a friend that used to call me Good to Go Shelley. I was down for whatever. I like to party. I like to get loud. I'm very outgoing. Usually the life of the party. I can walk into a room and bring up the energy and get people going, and not shy. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
I got to work on being not shy. Like I'm good. Like, I don't know. It's just like weird. I'm the type of person that'll still go on a stage, but I'm still shy kind of doing it. You know, I'm introverted, but extroverted at the same time. See, he's shaking his head. He probably feels the same way. So do you end up going to college? You graduate high school? What happens?
So I graduated high school, but barely. I started experimenting with drugs, I'd say around 15 years old, but it wasn't like I became an addict. It was just recreational drug use. But I was still like, I hung out with the party kids, you know, and so I was out partying, didn't want to go to school. The only reason like I would go to school and I'd half-ass it was because I knew I needed to graduate or it was going to like affect my future when, you know, trying to find employment, and I just didn't want to deal with that. So I was like, okay, I'll do the bare minimum and graduate, and I did. And then did not want to go to college at all. I was like, I just did not like school. Then when I was 21, I decided to, you know, I shifted a little bit. I changed my perspective on life. I had gotten clean. I'd stopped partying, and I did go to college. Went to a community college in Sacramento, and started working towards like an AA degree. Maybe only got about 3 semesters in, and then stopped going. So that's it for me for college.
What's an AA degree?
An associate's degree, just like a entry base level degree, and then you can go up to a bachelor's and then a master's.
You could tell I never went to college.
Yeah.
Okay. And what drugs were you experimenting early on?
So first it was alcohol, then it was weed, then it was acid, then it was shrooms, then it was meth, then it was cocaine. Then it was prescription pills. I didn't discriminate when it came to drugs.
Was there something like a feeling you were trying to escape or even achieve by using those drugs?
I think at the time, I don't know, like probably, but I wasn't self-aware to know. But I think, you know, looking back, I must have, you know, I was filling a void. Usually that's what addiction stems from, is some type of void that you're, you know, or trauma or something that, you know, you're dealing with. And it was probably too just because it's all I'd known, you know, from my, you know, growing up with my dad and him being a big influence in my life. And just being attracted to that as well. I always thought the non-partiers were boring. Yeah.
So what happens after you leave college then?
So I actually go through a very transformative religious experience. Never been a religious person, always believed in God. And I ran into an old friend of mine from high school at the bank one day, and it was really good to see her. She's one of my best friends. And I said, "Hey, girl, we should go out and party." And she's like, "I have to tell you something." She's like, I don't party anymore. Like, I've turned my life around. I'm a Christian. I gave my life to God, and, you know, and I was like, "Oh, okay."
Get away from me.
Well, I wasn't, I didn't really think get away from me, but I was like, okay, well, if that's what you want, I mean, but you still were a good friend of mine. You want to go hang out and have coffee or something? So she said, yeah. And I was just going to be, I just respected her and her decision. Well, we ended up hanging out. We had a really good conversation, and then we just rekindled the friendship and started hanging out more. And then the more I started to hang out with her, the more I saw this light within her. And I didn't understand it, but I wanted that. I was like, wow, she had such this peace and this love. And she wasn't like preachy, or she wouldn't sit there and try to convert me or anything. But it was just the way that she carried herself and the energy, the frequency of which she operated on. And you could tell she was vibrating at a high frequency. And so one day I just asked her if she could take me to church. And she did. And next thing you know, the pastor's doing an altar call, and I'm bawling. Like, I can't even keep it together. I'm sitting, as soon as we walk into the church, the worship music's playing, and I just start bawling. And I can't keep it together during all the worship songs, and I don't even know what the message was about, because I just was like trying so hard not to cry. And then all of a sudden the sermon's over and he's doing an altar call. And I just remember getting up out of my seat, just snot dripping down my, nose, and my mascara just running down my face. And I'm walking to the front of this church, and there's all these people that worked at the church waiting for those that, walk to the front of the church to pray with them. And I walk up to this lady, and I'm just like, I think I blew snot all over her. And she prayed with me. And it was one of those moments where, I learned about like the Holy Spirit and what that is about. And they talk about it being like the cleansing of your soul. And I literally, after I received, Jesus into my life, I left the church that day. I felt different. And it was like I had completely changed my whole perspective on life just in an instant. And I knew God was real. And so so for a while it was like, okay, what can I do to, continue on this path and be of service and be a good servant, right, to God. And that was really like just all I cared about. And life was good. And God really showed me that he was real. And I think I needed that. And I think, for lack of a better term, I was bottle fed, right? and then it was good for about a year and a half. And then, the bottles started being taken away. And, I think at some point you have to mature, right? And I wasn't at that level. Like, once the bottles started getting taken away, right, I really started to struggle with that. And I felt like God was leaving me, and then things would happen in my life. And like, my brother got sent to war. My great aunt got diagnosed with cancer. I ended up losing my job. And this all happened within like a couple of months. And it was a lot for me to deal with. And I ended up just slowly turning my back on God, and just started using drugs again. First, it was prescription pills. And then I started doing cocaine. And when I lost my job, I didn't know what else to do, except like I had bartended before. And that was really the only skills that I had, or so I thought, right? And so I got back into bartending, and that's not a great environment, and so quickly it just led me down to more drinking, meeting up with more people that had drugs, using drugs. And then before I knew it, I wasn't, talking to God anymore, and just continued on that path. And up until 30-something years old, I started selling drugs to support my habit. Started using, I'd use prescription pills and meth. And then if I ran out of prescription pills, I was, using heroin, and started selling drugs to support my habits, and eventually got caught. And I was trafficking drugs across state lines at one point and got caught by the feds.
Where were your parents during that, spiral period?
So they were around, my mom and dad were separated. Like, my mom had moved on and my dad was still doing his stupid shit, but I didn't hang out with either one of them really that much. When you're in your addiction, you don't want to be around family, so to speak, right? Because you're high and you want to go hang out with your friends that get high. And that's what's important. So I didn't spend a lot of time with my mom. I would have with my dad, but to be fully honest, like, the thought of doing hard drugs with my dad just weirded me out. Although he would have been open to it, I just was like, that's just too weird for me.
Did you have a lot of friends that you were doing drugs with pass away over the years? Because that was a big chunk of time from like your early 20s to, you started selling in your early 30s.
Yeah. Not a lot of friends, because I didn't start getting into the harder, like the heroin, which, a lot of people pass away, from like heroin and things like that, from the overdosing. I was using meth and just Vicodins a lot. I mean, people pass away from taking too many prescription pills, obviously, but I was really the only one in my group that was really into the pain pills. Everyone else was just into the meth. No. To answer your question, no, not a lot of people passed away. But when I started getting into heroin and hanging out with people that did heroin, yes, I had friends that died.
Attention locked in listeners, imagine this. You're inside a high stakes prison yard and every move counts. You've got to make the right call or you're out. That's what it's like playing Prize Picks, where your decisions matter and every pick could be the one that gets you the big win. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, Prize Picks is the best way to get in on real money daily fantasy action. It's simple. Pick more or less on at least 2 player projections and get a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. With the Super Bowl almost here, Prize Picks is making it easier than ever to win real money. You could get a free pick where one of the starting quarterbacks only needs to throw 1 yard to win. Just pair it with one more correct pick and you can cash out big. Check out the promos tab to tail any of their Super Sweat Millie winners' big game lineups. If you follow a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you'll get a split of $1 million in promo funds. I've been locked in on Prize Picks lately, and let me tell you, it's easier to use than a prison commissary order sheet. I could set my lineup in under 60 seconds, and when I win, I get my cash fast, safe, and secure, sometimes in just 15 minutes. So what are you waiting for? Download the app today and use code Ian Bick to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, just play $5 and you get $50 guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Now let's get back into today's episode.
Who gave you the idea to start trafficking across state lines? Because you don't take me as a person that was going to become a drug dealer,
What's funny is I always told myself that I was never going to sell drugs and put myself into that position, that I was just going to be, a user of drugs, but never a dealer of drugs. Because if I did that, then I would never put myself at risk and never have to go to jail and experience the shit that my dad did. Well, I ran into one of my high school sweethearts, And I'll have to give you a little bit of context before I get into the trafficking. So I ran into one of my high school sweethearts. We reconnected after many, many years. We were both on meth. And we wanted to get clean. So we moved to Louisiana. He found a job doing construction. And we moved to Louisiana and got clean. And that lasted for about a year until he met another girl and started cheating on me and then abandoned me and left me alone in our apartment. And I was talking to a good friend of mine. She said, hey, you should go to North Dakota. There's an oil boom going on right now. And bartenders there make like $1,000 a night. And I was like, what? So I look up online, or not online. Well, maybe it was. I can't remember where I looked. But I found a job posting for a bartending job in North Dakota. I was like, holy shit. So I call the number. The guy answers. I talk to him. And he's like, you sound like a great person. I'd love to hire you. Can you come up here? And I can't remember. It was like June or July. And I think it was like April at the time when I talked to him. And I was like, sure. So June comes around. He's still messing with this other girl. And I pack all my stuff in my little Honda and I drive to North Dakota. The first night I get there, I start bartending. I didn't have anywhere to stay, so I was staying with one of the bartenders that I was working with that night. First night, she goes, hey, I got some meth. You want to get high? I was like, oh, shit, here we go. All right. Yeah, I'll just do it this one time. And it was awful. I mean, it was the worst meth ever. But, I hadn't gotten high in probably like, I don't know, close to a year. So, and then that's what opened up the door. I mean, it was like, I let the demon in and he brought 7 of his friends, right? And, now the addiction's up and roaring again. And living in North Dakota, it's very rural and you can't find much out there. I mean, the entire state, I think, has 1 million people total. And so you have, a lot of very small towns, not, very kind of laid back life, not a lot of drugs out there. And so trying to find drugs was a nightmare. And here I am, I just woke in my addiction and I'm like, okay, what do I do now? Oh, I know. I have connections in Sacramento. Let me reach out to some of my old connections and see if they can send me some. And my whole thing was I'll just have maybe just like an ounce sent via, the mail. And I'll break it up into grams, into 28 grams, and I'll just keep, I don't know, an 8-ball for myself and sell the rest, get my money back. And that'll be it, right? Just to get some good stuff. Well, here's the thing too. Because drugs are so scarce in North Dakota, the price of drugs in North Dakota is insane. So a gram of meth, I don't even know what a gram of meth would be anymore. It's been so long. But I think back in the day, it was like maybe $50. I don't know. And in North Dakota, a gram of meth is $250.
Wow.
Yeah. So you can imagine when I started selling these grams at $250, it's 28 grams in an ounce. Getting that type of money. I've never made that type of money before. So there's my second addiction. And so, here I am, I'm getting amazing drugs sent, to me from my friend, in the mail. I'm making all this money. I was fooling myself to think that I could just do it once and stop. There was no way. And so I started with an ounce. Then I said, oh yeah, I'll just get one more. And the money that I get from this, I'll just pay off my car. And then I'll stop. Right. And that was just always my story every time. And then next thing you know, it was 2 ounces, and then it was 3 ounces. And then it was getting to be too much. So I would drive there every other week and
All the way
pick
to
up.
Sacramento.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'd go pick it up, quarter pound, half pound, right? And just like I'd start and getting like pills and heroin. Like it just, it escalated very quickly, just,
Where would you put it in your car? Were you being careful, or were you just throwing a duffel bag in the back seat?
no, I was hiding it various spots throughout my car, double bagging it, so that if I ever got pulled over, the dogs wouldn't be able to smell it. Yeah,
Did you look suspicious at all, or
no, not at all. I was,
like you didn't look strung out or anything like
oh,
that?
yeah, I was definitely skinny. So right now I'm about 145. I was probably 120.
Wow.
So if you imagine me,
And
25
pale,
pounds.
probably. Right?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Now, when it came through the mail, how would it come packaged?
So it was funny. My guy would take VHS cassettes and he'd unscrew them. He'd take out the tape, and then he'd package it in the cassettes, and then put the screws back in, and then pop the sleeve of the movie or whatever movie it was, and then he'd send it that way.
Wow, I've never heard of that before. That's pretty smart. And I guess back then, no one was batting an eye on VHS tapes.
Yeah. Well, but he would wrap it up in like a brown package, so you didn't know. But I think he did it. So I don't know why he did that. It wouldn't really matter, because if they opened up the package, if the dogs smelled the drugs, they would open it up and then break open the movie, right, or the cassette, right? And that's exactly what happened.
That's how you got caught?
Yeah.
How would you get the money to him?
How did I get the money to him?
Do you mail it back separately, or Western Union it, or?
I think I Western Unioned it, yeah.
Okay.
And then there was a card called Green Dot that he had, like a credit card where I could go load money onto it for him. So it was a combination of those two.
Okay, so walk us through about how you got caught then.
Oh my God. So
And how long into your run was this? How long were you doing it for?
not maybe a year.
And how much do you think you had made in that year?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Not. I don't know. I wasn't making millions or anything. Maybe a couple 100,000, or I don't know. But I ended up getting caught. So when you live in a small town, you start selling drugs, and you stick out like a sore thumb. You got people coming in and out of your house at all hours, right? People are not dumb. Like they knew what was going on. And then also people that I would sell to would get busted, and would try to work with the police to get out of trouble. So they would give him my name. And one of the guys I used to sell to got caught and said, "Hey, this girl's bringing pounds in through the mail. You need to go after her." Yeah. So he told them how I get the package through, I think it was FedEx or UPS, one of them, right? And so they basically like set up a sting operation. I had a package come through. They intervened, had the dog, smell the package. He alerted them there's drugs in there. Opened the package, found the drugs. And it was interesting because I was out of town when the package came through, and I kept getting a notification from UPS saying they couldn't deliver my package, that it was stuck. I think it was because of the weather. It was snowing, and that I'd had to come pick it up at the UPS place. And I was out of town, so I call my friend, and I'm like, "Hey, go down and pick up my package. They're saying they can't deliver it, and I'm not sure what's going on." And I should have like known what the hell was happening, but I was just, I was so high on drugs, man. So he goes to pick it up. They arrest him. And he's like, I don't know what's going on. I'm just here. I was told to pick up this package. And they're like, all right, call her on the phone right now. Get her to come here. So he calls me and he's like, hey, I don't know what's going on, but I saw a cop. Like, you better get over here and get your package. I'm not going down for this. Like, I've got it here with me. So hurry up. I was like, okay, I'll be there soon. So I end up pulling up into the parking lot. And then next thing you know, all the cop cars come and I get out of the car. They come up, put the handcuffs on me and take me down to the local jail.
Wow.
Yeah. And
it was the feds that arrested you? Or?
So I don't know if it was the feds, but this is funny because they didn't. What ended up happening? That case ended up getting dropped somehow, and I'm trying to remember. I think because it didn't get delivered to my house, my name wasn't on the package. I didn't talk, and they didn't have any proof. They couldn't convict me of it, and so they ended up dropping that. And I remember I was sitting in the jail, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. And 2 officers pulled me out of my cell to talk to me, and they could have been federal agents. I'm not sure. And they asked me, about the drugs. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And so they're like, okay, are you sure? I was like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not stupid. I'm not going to talk to you. So they sent me back to my cell. And next thing you know, I'm getting rolled up. They're like, Shelley, roll it up. You're getting released. I was like, holy shit.
It worked.
Yeah. What's funny, though, is the VHS cassette that my friend had chosen to use this time around, because I saw, I think I saw a photo of it, or he sent me a photo of the package, right? It was Cops in Hot Pursuit. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Right? Like, what the heck? I bet they chuckled when they opened that up and saw
That's
that.
funny.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happens? You get out that day because you still end up in prison. So what happens next?
Yeah. So I get out, start going back to my normal.
Oh, you went back to doing the same routine?
Of course.
Oh, and they probably had a tail on you and they were watching.
Oh, no, you don't even know. Yeah, it was crazy. So you think that story is crazy? Wait till I tell you this one.
Wow.
So, yeah, so I go right back to selling drugs, trafficking, getting stuff through the mail, driving there, picking stuff up, same old, same old. And I meet this guy at the bar one day. And apparently he had gotten busted by the feds for like guns or something. And he was working with them to try to lower his sentence because he was looking at, I think, 10 years. I didn't know this at the time. I didn't know this till later. So when I met him and he found out I was a drug dealer, he was going to set me up. And it was interesting, too, because I was selling drugs to him. But he says, hey, listen, I need you to go and I know this gang, this motorcycle gang, they want a pound of meth. Can you go pick it up? And I had become friends with this guy, so I trusted him. And the reason why he wanted me to do a pound, I come to find out later, was if you get caught with a pound, I think it's like life in prison or something in North Dakota. And it was going to be a large enough amount to make it an impact on his sentencing. So he's like, okay, I need a pound of meth and I need a bunch of pills. at the time he wanted oxycodones. So I went and picked up. I told him, I was like, no way I'm bringing back a pound, dude. I'm not doing that, because if I get caught with that shit, that's life. I'm not taking that chance. So I ended up bringing back like a quarter pound or something, and like 300 oxys. Well, little did I know that he had the feds waiting for me to come, to drive into Dickinson, which was the little town I lived in, to bust me. But here's the thing that saved my ass. So I'm in California with my boyfriend at the time, and we drove my Honda. He had a truck there that he needed to also drive back to North Dakota. So we ended up getting his truck. I was driving my car. I stopped off at a friend's house. I met this girl. And I was like, hey, you should come out to North Dakota. I don't know why. I was just, her and I hit it off. And I was like, you should come to North Dakota. And like, I got an extra room. And so I had her drive my Honda while me and my boyfriend drove his truck. But here's the thing that this guy didn't know. David, the one that was trying to set me up. He didn't know that I wasn't in my Honda, that I had this other truck. So when he told the cops, look out for this silver Honda Accord, that's exactly what they did. They weren't looking for a truck, a blue truck, Ford truck, right? And so me and my ex, or me and my boyfriend at the time, were driving in his truck. She's driving my Honda, and right before we get to Dickinson, the city we lived in, I pulled off to the side of the road because the drugs were in my Honda. I pulled him out of the Honda, brought him into the truck, and then we drove back to the house. Well, at some point I lost her at the light, or she got stuck at a light or something. And so we're driving up to my house, and all of a sudden I see this sheriff drive by, and me and my boyfriend look at each other like, what the hell? Why did this cop just drive by? Like, that's so random. We just got done picking up all these drugs. Like, that's a little bit weird. And then my phone rings, and it's that girl. And she's like, I don't know what the hell's happening. She says, but like, there's 20 cars that just blocked me in at this intersection. They're arresting me right now. You need to hurry up and get here. And I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God. So I knew the drugs weren't in the car. So what I did was I went and hid them in a bush in front of my house. And I'm thinking it'll be fine. But what I didn't realize was that it was snowing and that there were footprints. So anyway, so I hide the drugs in the bush. We hop in that truck. We drive over to her, and I'm feeling cocky because I'm like, I ain't got nothing on me. I know there's nothing in the car. They ain't got shit. So I'm like, hey guys, what's going on? You looking for me? And I'm like, what's going on here? Why do you have, why'd you guys pull over my friend? And they didn't know what to do or say. They looked, all through that car for drugs, didn't find nothing. I think she had paraphernalia or something on her, so they ended up arresting her for that. And so they were pissed. I ended up getting in my car, driving it back to the house. And as soon as I pull up to the house, everything just kind of went slow motion. And I look over and I see the cop in the bush with my bag of shit. And I was like, oh shit. And then this cop on the other side like starts walking over to my car, and I'm just like driving this slow, and he's walking, right? And I stop, and he opens my door, grabs me out of the car, arrests me, and takes me into jail.
Wow.
Yeah. and I'm in the holding tank with that girl. And I was like, dude, I'm so sorry. She's like, what the fuck did you get me into? You know, like, what the fuck? I was like, I'm sorry, you know, just don't say anything. Just keep your mouth shut. We'll be fine. We'll get out of this. So again, the 2 agents come and pull me out of my cell to ask me about the drugs, right? I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. A couple of days go by. It's time for my arraignment. I show up for court. It's a virtual situation that they have. So I show up in this little room with the, camera and getting ready to meet with the judge. And I'm like, I'm not pleading guilty. Like, because that's when you're supposed to either plead guilty or not guilty, right? I'm like, I don't know what to say. Like, I know I'm not pleading guilty, but I haven't talked to anybody. Like, I don't even have a lawyer, nothing. All of a sudden, I get, right as they were going to call my name to go up and speak to the judge, I get pulled out of that courtroom. And they said, roll it up, you're going home. I'm like, what? So apparently, because the drugs were found in the bush, anybody could have placed it there. There was no proof that it was mine. They didn't do a forensics or do fingerprints or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And they didn't get the footprints. They didn't take a picture of the bottom of my shoe to compare the footprints or anything like that either. I don't know why. You think they would have, but they didn't. So
it's drugs, not really a murder scene.
Yeah, exactly.
They didn't need CSI.
Yeah, exactly. So, so they and because the bush was on the outside of the house and anybody could access it or put drugs there.
It's a common area.
It's a common area, 100%. So they couldn't charge me. So I get out and I go back to selling drugs again.
You had a good run.
Yeah.
How long does this go on for?
About a year, maybe, I don't know, year and a half.
But it was a year from when they caught you the first time, and then the second run.
Oh, no, a year total.
Oh, a year total of the catching and releasing?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So what happens, I'm guessing the third time is the final one?
The third time's a charm, right?
But they don't obviously catch you with a pound.
No. They caught me with 2 ounces. So the third time, they had started following me around, and it got to the point where it was like so obvious that they were watching me. But I don't know, I still was like, yeah, they're never going to catch me. So stupid. Well, one day, and I kept a pretty tight circle, for the most part, after going through that experience, I was like, all right, I'm not selling any new people. And I started having my friends, start selling to other people to scale. I didn't want to deal with anybody. I didn't want to put myself in that position. So, well, one of my friends, my inner circle friends, comes back and he's like, hey, I just helped this couple on the side of the road. Their car broke down. And I gave him a ride, and they had asked if I knew where to get any shit. And I was like, yeah, actually I do. How much do you guys want? And he's like, they want 2 ounces. I'm like, 2 ounces? That's $5,000, because I was charging $2,500 an ounce. So I was like, all right. Well, that's a lot of money. I'll do it. But I'm not going to meet with the girl. Well, long story short, I ended up going to meet this girl. Well, I said, let me meet her first before I sell her these drugs. So her and her boyfriend ended up coming over. We partied and hung out. She seemed pretty cool. I was like, all right, I'll do it. So I needed some time to get the drugs because I had gotten, I was low on my supply. So I told her, how much time it would take and she's like, all right, meet me at this parking lot. I have to go visit. She said, because she had lost her kids. They were in a foster home. So because of her drug addiction or her drug use. And so she's like, I have to go visit with my kids at this office here, government office. And then I'll be done at this time. Just meet me in the parking lot. Well, I should have known. Like parking lot's like the number one place to do like a sting operation because it's they can all sit there in unmarked cars. You wouldn't know the difference. But they had surveillance, audio, video, everything. Mm-hmm. I put the 2 ounces. I buy this Arizona tea can, the one that's hollowed out, and the top screws off, and I stick the drugs in there, and I screw the top on. And I'm still a little bit paranoid because I'm like, okay, why is she having me meet her in the parking lot? But I know what I'll do. I'll park off to the side. I won't take my car. I'll take my roommate's truck. I'll park down this alleyway. And I got out of the car and I'm walking to go meet her in the parking lot. I set the can down by this garbage can and I get into her car. I see her get into the car and she hands me the money. And so I lean up and I whisper in her ear because I didn't, I figured she would, if she was working with the police, she would be wired, right? So I would try to whisper in her ear and I'm like, it's in the Arizona can by the trash can. And then I get out of the car and start walking back to my car. She gets out of the car and she's like thinking like I just, she's not, I think she was paranoid thinking that I didn't leave the drugs or something. And she's like walking over to the trash can, hoping to see this Arizona can. And she sees the can, grabs the can, goes back to her car. I hop in my truck and I go back to my house. And that's when they had me. But they didn't arrest me. They didn't arrest me until 5 months later.
And was that the feds that time that got you?
That was the feds. Because they had to take that evidence, go before the grand jury, get the indictment. They had to present the evidence, get the indictment, and then they came and arrested me.
Did they do the whole, show or did they come peacefully or how'd that work?
No. Okay, so I was speeding on the street, down the street one day, and I got pulled over by one of the local cops. Now, granted, all the cops knew who I was. Like I said, when you live in a small town and you're selling drugs and you got all these people telling on you, yeah, they know who you are. They're just waiting to bust you. Well, I get pulled over by one of the cops and he wants to search my car. And I'm like, no, because I know that they can't unless they have, probable cause or if you're on probation. And he had no probable cause and I wasn't on probation. So I was like, fuck you. You're not searching my car. And he was pissed. And he's like, you know what? I don't even care. He's like, because the feds are going to get you in like a month. Like he gave me the timeline. Like he gave me the information that I needed. And I was like, oh, okay. Went home, packed up all my shit, got a U-Haul, moved it all to Wyoming. I had a friend out in Wyoming and put my stuff in a storage unit, started staying with him. And, living out in Wyoming for a little while. I mean, maybe it was like 2 or 3 weeks. It wasn't that long. And I'm like, fuck this. I'm not making any money. Like, I need to go back to North Dakota where I could sell a gram for $250. So I decided to go back to North Dakota. It was around it was close. I think it was right after Christmas. And, it was right around Christmas time. And I go back and I'm at my friend's house. And, me and my boyfriend had broken up at that point. And he was like off doing his own thing. Well, he finds out I'm back in town at one of our mutual friends' houses. So he like shows up and like goes fucking ham and like starts fighting and like threatening. There's a bunch of people over there. He like kicks down the door and shit. And he's a big dude. So like we were scared. Like, and he thought I was like messing with some guy or something, right? And so one of the people there calls the police, and the police show up and they see me. And they're like, she's back. So the next morning at about 4 a.m, I hear this bang, bang, bang. Because now, granted, they had a search warrant for my house. I think when they got the indictment, it was for my house, but they didn't have the search warrant for the house that I was staying at. So they couldn't just like, bust down the door, but they definitely were like banging on the door. My friend was in the garage. They arrested him. He let them in the house. They're like, Shelley Winner, come out with your hands up. Because I was in one of the back bedrooms, right? And I had been up for I don't know how many days. And I wake up and my brain's like, the cops are here. You're going to jail. And I look down, I have this water bong, and I just pick it up and I smash it on the ground. And I'm like, okay, I gotta get rid of the bong. I gotta get rid of these drugs. I'm like, I gotta hide them somewhere. So there's this, and it's so hard to think that fast. You know what I mean? And like figure all this shit out. And you just woke up. You'd been up for days, right? And the cops are there, and you're in that type of position. Your adrenaline's going, and I'm like, okay, there's this basket in the closet. So I just grab it and I throw the drugs in there, and I'm like, okay. And they come in and they handcuff me, and they pull this chair out to the middle of the living room, and they sit me down, and they start asking me all these questions. Questions about other people, who were selling drugs to people I didn't even know. And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And he's like, oh, you don't? Okay. All right. You're not going to work with us? Okay, fine. We're taking you down to the jail. And I was like, okay. Cause you can't incriminate yourself. And that was one thing I knew is like, don't speak unless you have a lawyer present, no matter what. Right. So it took me down to the local jail, and that's when I found out that I was being arrested by the feds, and that it was the feds that came in and got me. And I was like, that was a holy shit moment.
Was there anyone else on your indictment, or is it just you?
Yes. No, it was me and 2 of my friends.
Okay.
Yeah, because they had been, because I had them start selling drugs for me. So there were people, I think, that, snitched on him or snitched on them as well. So there were 2 of my friends that were on the indictment with me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming you take a plea deal. You don't go to trial.
Hell no. You can't.
You went to trial?
No.
Oh, okay.
Hell no.
Yeah, okay.
No.
So you take a plea deal. Did you take the first one they offered you?
So, no, because they offered me 10 years. Yeah. So with the way it works in the feds, and it's so grimy. It is so grimy. Like they need to reform. They need to do some changes to the way that their laws are, because it's just ridiculous. So the way it works is based off of your criminal history, and like if you're caught for drugs, based off of the amount of drugs will determine what your sentence is. So anything like over 50 grams of meth or 49 grams of meth puts you in like a 10-year minimum mandatory sentencing. That's the guidelines. Like, are you kidding me? 10 fucking years? Not even pedophiles get 10 years, right?
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. This is my first time, well, my first, actual, like, where they actually got me, right? My first arrest. I mean, I'd been arrested for other shit, like under the influence, and I had a domestic violence charge because I was in this abusive relationship. But I mean, they were like misdemeanor.
Yeah, I mean, my guidelines were 10 to 12 years.
Yours was?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I went to trial. That was after trial.
Yeah, oh, shit.
10 to 12, yeah.
Whew.
It's pretty crazy, though, for a first-time offender, no felonies on your record before.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah. It's nuts.
Yeah. So I had a couple things going for me. And one was that I had no prior, like, felony convictions, so that lowered my number. Because it's like a number system, right? Like, if I remember correctly, like, the higher your number, the more time you get, or the more of a risk you are. Yeah. So, and then I admitted, because I knew they had me. I knew I had figured out that it was a sting operation that happened, and so I knew they had me.
You took responsibility, so that was a decrease.
Yeah, I took responsibility. And then what's so crazy is they asked me to also, like, work with them and set up my guy. And I was like, oh, hell no. like that'll put me in a whole different, position. Like, okay, that might get me a lower sentence, but, like, what am I going to do when I get out dealing with that shit? So I was just like, oh my God. And I told him, I said, I just need a few days to process this and think about it. I'm not going to commit to anything right now, but I need to talk to my family. I need to figure out what I'm going to do here. So here's the thing. Me and my guy, my connection, got into this huge, huge fight. He ended up, like, robbing me. Not like I sent him money and then he never sent the drugs. And so I had, words with him. I was like, and I knew, like, our relationship was done. I had nobody else that I was working with. So when they were like, we want you, to set up your guy, I knew that it would be an act of God to, like, have that even happen. Because first of all, he's not going to talk to me. We're not going to talk to each other. And they would have to literally fly me to Sacramento to hang out with him and do this, sting operation. And I knew it wasn't going to happen. And so I was talking to my dad, and he's like, listen, if that's the case, then if you tell them, yeah, you'll work with him, knowing that he's not going to talk to you and you're not going to be able to get this done, then it's not your fault. Like, you did what you said you were going to do, and it didn't work out. And so they still have to give you the reduction in your sentence. And that's exactly what happened. Mm-hmm. So I went back to him and I said, okay, I'll work with you guys, to get the sentence reduction. Now, granted, at this time, I just found out I was pregnant. I found out I was pregnant right after my arrest.
With his kid?
No, with my ex's kid.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, and I knew I was looking at 10 years. And so that was a huge, turning point for me too. And to think about, okay, fuck, do I really want to be behind bars for 10 years? Because with the feds, you do 85% of your time. And, when I told my dad the situation, he was like, yeah, fucking tell him you'll work with him because it's not going to happen anyways. And I was like, yeah, you're right. So I told him, yes, that I would work with them. And so they called down to the Sacramento office to try to, figure out logistics and coordinate this sting operation, right? But, what ended up really happening was Sacramento could give two shits about, some small, because, Sacramento obviously deals probably with, not probably, with much bigger fish than me, and for them to, I think what happened was for them to contact Sacramento for somebody so small, small time, I guess you could say, right, was just like a laugh. It was a joke. So they never even coordinated with North Dakota to set up the sting operation. It would have cost them so much money, to do all of this. They would have had to pay for flight, hotel, food, all of it, right? And just to get me down there to say, oh, well, he's not answering. Oh, he's not meeting me. Oh, because I knew he wasn't going to meet with me. Like, we were done. And so my lawyers told them, like, hey, you know what? It's not her fault. You still need to give her the reduction. And they did. And that was it was a moment for me. I was like, oh my God, and I just really felt like God was still with me, that he was protecting me. Like, even though I thought he had left and I thought, and I turned my back on him, at that moment, I knew that I was being protected. Because it's not like, oh yeah, I want to work with the feds, right? Because that's putting yourself in a situation that, because I knew he worked, he got his drugs from Cartel, right? What happens if I worked with the feds and then got him arrested, and then, you know what I mean? Like, that would have put my life in danger, my family's life in danger. And to me, that's way worse than prison, right? And so, like, when they presented that to me, it made me sick to my stomach to even think about having to be put into that position, right? But at the same time, I'm thinking, okay, I have a chance here, like, because I knew the situation that him and I were not he wasn't gonna respond to any of my phone calls or texts. I just knew it wasn't gonna go down. I was very confident it wasn't gonna go down, and so I was like, thank you, God, thank you, because that was a tough situation to be in, for sure.
So how much time did they end up giving you?
4 years.
Okay.
Yeah, so it went from 10 to 4.
And that's in a woman's federal prison.
Yeah, so I got sent to Dublin FCI in the Bay Area, and I was very fortunate because it was the closest women prisons to Sacramento. So while I was fighting my case, they released me to like a halfway house, and I was still doing drugs, like not all the time, but like I had my dad send me in like a pill, and I was bringing in GHB, and I'm pregnant, you know what I mean? I'm like craving drugs. I would have done meth if it was there. Like my addiction was so strong, and I almost got caught there. And if you get caught, because I was an inmate, so it would have been the equivalent to me like if I got caught bringing drugs into jail. Another charge.
Yeah. And
I knew if I didn't get the hell out of this halfway house, because everybody was doing drugs around me, if I didn't get out of this halfway house, then I was screwed. It was just a matter of time. So I find out about this treatment place called Adult and Teen Challenge. It's a faith-based Christian recovery program. And I call my dad, and I go, Dad, I don't have a computer, but I need you to go online and print the application for me. It's about 7 pages. And do me a favor. Put a little tiny roxycodone in some foil, tape it in the middle of the pages, and mail it to me. So because I knew that because the pill was small enough to where you couldn't really tell because there were so many sheets of paper. So I get my packet, or I get the envelope. I go into the bathroom. I unroll the pill. I get a pen, and I take it apart, and I smoke my pill because that was my whole thing. I loved smoking pills. So I smoke the pill in the bathroom. I fill out the application to this treatment place, and I just remember thinking to myself, you know what? Why my life went to shit like this is because I turned my back on God. Well, I need to get right with him. And this is the perfect opportunity for me to. And so I mailed off my application and I got accepted. And so it's funny because my probation officer was like, no, you can't go into this program, because I'd asked her if I could. And she's like, no, absolutely not. And so when she found out I applied and got accepted, she was pissed. She came to see me at the halfway house and I said, listen, I need help. Like this place is not providing me any support for my addiction. If anything, it's making it harder for me, and I need to get out of here, and I need to go into a treatment place. And so when we had that conversation, I think she realized, and she was like, okay, fine, I'll approve it. Went into the program, and that's where my journey of healing mentally, physically, spiritually started. And boy, was it a journey. Oh man, when I got there, I had a lot of demons and a lot of anger. And I hated the world. I hated every single girl in that program. I had a very hard time getting along with them. Almost got kicked out of the program getting into a fight. And here I am, I'm like 6 months pregnant in some girl's face, like, bitch, I'll beat your ass, This is just ghetto, right? I almost get kicked out of the program. And then that was a wake-up call for me. My probation officer came in and she said, what the fuck are you doing? You're 6 months pregnant. You're in a treatment program, and you're like trying to get into fistfights. She's like, you know what? As soon as you give birth to your child, I'm going to make sure that you have no rights to him, because you clearly are not ready to be a parent. Your child's going to get sent into a foster home, and that's going to be his story. And I was like, no, please. And I just broke down. I started bawling. I was like, please just go talk to the program director and see if they'll give me another chance. I promise you won't hear another peep out of me. She said, okay, I'll go talk to her. But, she says, no, I got to take you down to the jail, and you're going to remain there until you're sentenced. And so she goes and talks, and I just remember like talking to God. And I hadn't talked to him in so long. And I'm like, God, just give me this chance, And I wanted to change. I just didn't know how, because I had just gone backwards, and allowed so much negativity into my life that I just didn't know how to be positive. And she ends up coming back. She's like, it's your lucky day. They're going to give you a second chance. And I was like, oh my God. And she ends up leaving. I go up into my room, and I just drop to my knees, and I just start bawling. And I'm just like, God, I don't know how to change, and I don't want to be this way anymore. And I feel ugly, and I feel negative, and I need you to change my heart, because I don't know what else to do. And it wasn't like I had instant transformation, but that was really that moment of desperation where I completely surrendered at that moment. And it was like, God was like, finally, now I can work. Now I have something to work with, And from that day forward, each day I started to see the world in a more positive light. All of the girls that were everything that they did that annoyed me, that I focused on, I started to see the beauty in them, and like started focusing on the things that I loved about them. And our friendships started developing. We started growing close. And it was like this huge weight that had been on my chest was like getting lighter, like lifting, and getting lighter and lighter each day. And then before I know it, me and every single one of those girls, even to this day, I love every single one of them. I'm so grateful for them. We had, we all bonded, and And I went into prison completely changed. God had completely changed me again. And I didn't think it was possible, you know? And so I give birth to my son, and then I get sentenced. So I get sentenced. So I give birth to my son. The judge gives me 2 months. I give birth to him October 1st, 2014. And I have to turn myself in December 1st. So I get about 2 months to be with my son. And then I say goodbye to all the girls. They're crying, you know. It was a very emotional moment. And they're hugging me. And I go and I start my sentence. And I told the judge, or when he sentenced me, I asked him if he could send me to a prison close to Sacramento. But the only prison that was close was Dublin, in the Bay Area. And he approved it.
How old were you when you got sent to prison? Like when you walked in the doors?
I think I was like 37 or something. I 37. Yeah, I think 37, 36, 37 years old, somewhere around there. Yeah.
Was prison what you expected it to be?
Not at all. Oh my God. So I remember calling my dad and saying, "Okay, Dad, I need your advice. Like, how do I deal with this?" So he's like, "Okay, don't borrow nothing from anyone. Don't take anything for free. Because nothing's for free, right?" And he's like, "You got to hang with your own race." You know,
You're going to a woman's camp.
Yeah. And so he didn't know that it wasn't like that. I don't know about all women's prisons, but it wasn't like that when I walked into this federal prison. It was a low. It wasn't a camp. It was a low. Mm-hmm. But I remember getting there. I was so scared. I mean, I was like, "Oh my God, am I going to be somebody's bitch? Like, what's going to happen? This is so scary. These women are going to be like so mean." And, you know, it was just, oh my God. But it wasn't like that at all. I remember getting off the bus. We were in Pahrump, Nevada, and we had to take a bus all the way to Dublin. And I think it must have been like, I don't even know, maybe 10. I felt like it was like 10-hour drive or something. It was miserable on these cold metal seats, and you're shackled, you know, hands and feet. And it was just awful. And I get to the prison, and I remember walking in and like seeing trees and flowers and green grass, manicured, you know, grass. And I'm just like, what is going on? A squirrel runs by me, and I'm like, this is not at all what I expected. There's no bars. So I walk into my unit, and there's wooden doors with no locks and windows. And we had windows that opened, and we had curtains. And it was like, where the hell am I? And I just remember thinking, is this really prison? Like, it was literally like Camp Cupcake. It was nothing like I had expected, right? Because, you know, I watched like shows like Locked Up Raw or whatever, and I'd been to jail before, and I know what jail was like. But, you know, you watch shows like that, or you watch movies, and you imagine the worst, but it was not at all like that. I was very fortunate. Now, I'm not saying not all prisons are that way. All women's prisons are that way, because I've heard that there are some crazy women's prisons, and I know the men's definitely aren't that way. But it was a very transformational time for my life. And, you know, looking back, and I don't know if a lot of people would say this, but I am so fucking grateful for prison.
I mean, I am too. It's why we're here right now.
Yeah, I am so grateful for prison. It was one of the best things that ever happened to me. And, you know, as long as you are who you hang out with, right? And so when I got to prison, I told myself I'm not hanging out with anybody that's not on the right path and doing good for themselves. And so I just connected with like-minded individuals and, kept going to church and, growing my relationship with God. And really my time in prison was just really spent growing as an individual, and because I had access to all these incredible programs. It was because the prison was local, and in the Bay Area, it was flooded with volunteers bringing all kinds of rehabilitative programs. So, I mean, I had access to so many self-development, personal development programs. I mean, I learned, I did anger management. I took a class on forgiveness. Like where else would you be able to take a class to learn how to forgive, or, to forgive somebody, or how to forgive yourself, right? These are concepts that, it's not like we're taught this in school, right? And here I am learning a different way to think, a different way to be. And every class that I took, every rehabilitative program that I did while I was incarcerated just continued to build this strong foundation for me to be successful upon my release, because I believe personal development is really the key to operate at a higher frequency, because you have to learn a different way of life, because we only know what we know, and we don't know what we don't know. But when you do personal development, it kind of raises your self-awareness, it raises your vibrational frequency, and then you start operating at a different level. And then you start manifesting success in ways that you never thought possible. And so that's really what kind of what happened, and how my life upon my release, how I ended up achieving all of this success. I attribute it to all the personal development work that I did, and, my spiritual development too with God. A lot of doors were open for me that were supernatural, but I was operating at a level or a frequency to where I was ready to receive these gifts, these opportunities that came my way.
Tell us about the success that you did get to experience after prison, because I've interviewed a lot of women who have been to prison and obviously men, but they haven't reached that level of success that quickly.
Well, and I think I attribute it to shifting my mindset from a victim perspective and to one of being empowered and feeling blessed and grateful for my experiences, regardless of if the outcome is what I wanted or not. There was always a silver lining. Even if it was perceived negative experience, there was always something positive about it, right? And so when you can maintain that type of an outlook, or the law of attraction and the way the universe works is that opportunities will come your way. And so, for example, I had a dream of working in tech. That, for me at that time, that was the top of the mountain. If I can get a job working at a tech company, because I know they pay really well, they have excellent benefits. And then I watched that movie with Vince Vaughn. I think it was The Internship, where they worked at Google. And I was like, oh man, I want to work at, Google or something, right? But I didn't know how I was going to do it. And I didn't really stress on how I was going to do it. I had a plan of action that when I got out of prison, I would enroll myself into school and start working on a degree. And then, once I graduate, start applying to some of these tech jobs. That was just my plan. I didn't know what else I was going to do, because usually a job working at a tech company is requirement. You have to have a bachelor's or a master's degree. But I just knew that was my dream. That was the pinnacle of success, right? So I get out of prison, and I had been journaling. I had a prayer journal, and, I talked to God about what I wanted. I was very specific with him. I told God that I wanted to work in tech, that I didn't want some dead end job, because I saw my dad struggle finding employment when he got out. And he was always, after he had his his convictions, right? His record. And I I knew it was going to be hurdles, and I knew what society thought about people, who had criminal records, and it wasn't going to be easy. And so I kind of just prepped myself for that experience, but didn't let it get me down. I didn't fall into like a victim mentality mindset, like, oh, why even try? They're not going to hire me anyways, right? But I just stayed positive, and I was very, like I mentioned, I told God exactly what I wanted, and that I wanted a career. I didn't want some dead end job. I wanted to make enough money that was going to change my life, so that not only my life, but my son's life. And so I get out of prison, I get into school. And when you're on the right path, because all of these little synchronicities start happening. All these things, it's like, whoa, that really just happened, So I'm at the halfway house in San Francisco on Taylor Street, and I'm downstairs getting coffee, and I'm near the TV room, and the news is on, and I don't know what was being said except for this one part where I happened to zone in at that exact second. They said, if you have a criminal record and you want to work in tech, then Code Tenderloin, this is this program down in San Francisco, can help you. They help underserved communities, like the formerly incarcerated, get good paying jobs in tech. And I was like, did I just hear this right? I was just like, holy shit. So I beeline it to the TV and finish, watching the rest of what the what they were saying about this program, get the information, look them up online, and sign up for the next cohort. Get enrolled into this program. And it's a job readiness program. And so they teach you how to write a resume, they teach you how to interview. But the other really important thing that they do is they help you develop relationships with all the different tech companies. So they take you on like a tech tour, and you get to go, hang out at Microsoft, and we hung out at Twitter, and we went and hung out at NerdWallet, and just all these different like tech companies there local. And so one of the great things, about doing that was I got to develop relationships with the employees that worked there. And we went to one of the places we went was the Microsoft store. I don't know if you ever saw them, but
they closed a lot of them.
Yeah, they closed a lot of them. Yeah. So we went to the Microsoft store, and while we were there, one of the girls said, hey, because they brought our whole cohort, right? And they said, hey, if you guys are interested, you should apply because we're hiring. And at that moment, I thought, this is my in. This is it. If I can get my foot in the door here at the retail store, which I have the skills for this, right? It doesn't require a college degree. Then I can just work really, really hard and work my way up and get into corporate. And I was like, because, regardless of it being a retail store, it's still Microsoft. And so I applied for the job. Within a few days, I get a call back for an interview. Now, granted, here I am fresh out of prison. I'd probably only been out of prison a couple months, right? Maybe a few months. And I'm like, oh my God, I have an interview with Microsoft. Like, how does this happen, right? And this is what I'm talking about. Like, opportunities will start coming to you because you're not in a victim mindset. You're actually operating at a higher frequency. And so, like, God wants to give you what you want. He wants to give you your desires, right? But you have to be, open to receive him. And I was open to receive these opportunities. And so I get ready for the interview. I pass the first interview. I go to the second interview. And I was so nervous too. I was like, oh. And I get done with the interview, and she said, you know what? I want to hire you. Will you accept the offer? And I was like, what? Oh my God.
Of an ex-drug trafficker.
Yeah. So here in the back of my mind, I knew because she had said that I have to do the background check. And so when she mentioned that, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, oh shit. And the job offer was contingent upon the background check passing. So I told her, I was like, hey, I have to tell you something. I just got out of prison. It's not who I am today. But I just want to let you know this because I know that I have to do this background check and it's going to come up. And I really want this job. And do you think this is going to be a problem? And she says, you know what? I don't deal like with the background checks. Like they literally tell me that I can move forward or I can't. But I will tell you this, be honest about it. Because if you're not, you definitely won't get the job. And so I said, okay. And I went back and they emailed me they started the onboarding process, and so they emailed me all the paperwork and things I needed to fill out and the background check. And I started filling that out, sent that off. And as I'm going through the onboarding process, I'd get mails, here and there, things I needed to do, like fill out my W-2s and stuff. And on one of the emails, I think it was like the email from like, I got to choose like my health insurance and I'm like reading all the information. And then at the very bottom of the email, it had this link and it says, if you've been discriminated against, contact the Fair Chance Ordinance or something. And it had a link. And so I clicked on the link and I'm like, what is this? I shit you not. My eyes got wide. I'm like, what is this I'm reading right now? This law basically says that no company within San Francisco city limits that has over 500 employees can discriminate against somebody's criminal record unless their criminal record directly relates to the job. Mm-hmm. No company within San Francisco with over 500 employees can discriminate against somebody's criminal record if they have proof of rehabilitation, which I had. Because you remember, I did all these various programs while I was incarcerated. I had a stack of certificates, okay, to prove my rehabilitation.
Yeah.
So I had all of this going for me. And I was like, my crime doesn't directly relate. I have my proof of rehabilitation. They have to hire me. And I was like, is this? And it just sounded way too good to be true. And I'm like, is this real? So I send it to my dad. My dad's like, no, this fucking law, you're crazy. You can't make some company hire you. He's like, they're never going to hire you, Shelley. He's a negative Nancy. But anyways. But, he had been hardened from all the shit he went through getting denied from employment all the time. So, it sounded way too good to be true. And this happened to be a special law that San Francisco created. And, thank God I had a choice to go to San Francisco or to, God, I can't remember the other city. What? Fresno. Yeah. I had a choice to go to San Francisco or Fresno. It was like a 50-50 shot. I put in for San Francisco and I got it. Thank God I did, because my life would have been probably very different. So this law, basically, I was protected under this law. And so what ended up happening was, long story short, the background check came back flagged. They sent me an email saying, hey, you have 3 to 5 days to respond. Tell us why this got flagged. We'll take a look at, what you submit and then make a decision. So I take that as an opportunity to write this heartfelt email, tell him a little bit about what I did wrong, but more importantly, what I did right, who I was today, why they should hire me. And all of those certificates that I had, I scanned them all to my cloud drive. I attached them to the email because I wanted to prove that I'd really, truly changed my life. And here's the proof of that. I hit send. And I prayed for a miracle. And, and I remember talking to God. I'm like, God, I know you brought me this far for a reason. like, I really want this job, right? And this would suck if I don't get this job because of my criminal record. But and they unfortunately rescinded they came back and said sorry. Actually, they sent me a letter. They FedExed it to me with their Microsoft logo, and they said, based on the background check results, we unfortunately are not offering you employment at this time. And I'll never forget that moment. It was like my heart sank into my stomach. And because I had told everybody that I got the job, right? After I got out of that interview, I was like on cloud 5 million. I posted it on social media. I was calling my friends, my family. I got back to the halfway house. I was telling everybody in the halfway house. I saw him, I told him I got the job. And then here I was at this moment where I was like, oh my God, now what do I do? And it was this moment of shame, embarrassment, feeling of hopelessness. Just, am I ever going to be able to move on from this past, this record, and thrive? Will I ever have the same opportunities as everybody else? Is this going to be like these invisible handcuffs I wear for the rest of my freaking life? And so I was talking to my mom, and she says, hey, that fair chance ordinance you told me about, did you happen to contact them? And I said, no. I said, Mom, listen, they're the ones that sent me the information about this law. So clearly they know about it. And there's probably some loophole that I don't know about, because, why would they rescind my job offer if this was really protecting me? She says, just call them and see what they say. So I did. And the lady answers the phone, and she goes, so what company discriminated against you? And I said, Microsoft. And she says, okay, well, I just want to let you know that I will fight for you, but we've never fought a company this big. She said, the biggest company we ever fought was Foot Locker. And there's a huge chance we will not win. But I just want to prepare you and level set with you to make sure that you're ready to go on this journey, because it's going to be a tumultuous journey. And I knew at that point, and I had done enough personal development where I was emotionally ready to take on the challenge and go through it, because I knew if I didn't, I would always be left with what if for the rest of my life. And I wasn't willing to do that. And so I said, all right, let's do it. And so I went toe to toe with one of the biggest tech companies in the world. And it was scary, and it was crazy, and they came back, and they had every reason to be scared, as well, because, this was new territory for them, and they didn't know. And, they came back with every, I think, reasonable excuse as to why they didn't want to hire me. Any normal excuse I think any company would give, I'm a liability. What if I go back to prison? I can't be trusted, because I can't be around customers' information, and, it's things like that. And so we had to, we challenged them on that, or at least, the fair chance, the lady at the fair chance ordinance did, and said, this girl is not that person anymore. She's put in the work to turn her life around. She has her proof of rehabilitation. We have these laws in place for a reason. And just because you're Microsoft doesn't mean you don't have to abide by these laws. And they said, well, we've never heard of this law. Well, sorry you never heard of it, but it's real. And you know why they never heard of it? Because the HR in San Francisco, that team knew about it, but they never communicated it back to headquarters, which was in Redmond. Mm-hmm. And so where do you think my background check went?
To the headquarters.
Yep.
Hmm.
And so how would they know about some small ordinance in San Francisco unless somebody told them about it? So they had no idea. So I was the first person to ever leverage this law towards them.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so they said, once they realized that there wasn't much that could be done, that they had to give me a fair chance, they said, well, that original, because I think, 2 or 3 months had gone by where, I was dealing with this. And they said, well, the original position she applied for has been filled now. We had to fill it. But there's a new position that just opened up, same job, but she's up against 3 other applicants because they've already applied. So she's got to re-interview. And I was like, oh, shit. Because at that moment, that's when I was really like, they're just going to figure out a way to legally not hire me. They're going to say somebody better interviewed. They're going to say somebody more qualified interviewed. And they're getting out of this. And there's nothing I can do about it. And I think at that moment, every ounce of me just wanted to like quit. Just be like, you know what? I'm done. Fuck this. And then that part of my brain, just like, no, Shelley, just do it. Just go through, just jump through these hoops. Just get it done. Even if you don't get the job, at least you did everything you could, So I did. I prepared for the interview again, and I hate interviewing. It's an awful process, right? Prepare for the interview again. I go into the interview room. It's with the same woman, but the dynamics are completely different. I'm so nervous, like way nervous, because I'm nervous because I know that she knows my record came back, even though I told her. But I don't know what they said to her, HR or whatever. And I could tell that there was a difference in the dynamics, right? Where she was like all sweet and like kind, she wasn't that way anymore. And then we go through the interview process and she goes, is there any questions you want to ask me? And I was like, yes, this is like the best interview question ever. Like everyone needs to ask this question at the very end. Is there any reason why you wouldn't hire me? Because it puts them on the spot to automatically give you feedback in that moment on whether, they want to hire you or not, right?
Yeah.
And so she was surprised by that question, and she didn't have time to come up with a story. And so she just told me the truth. And she said, well, to be honest, I don't really see a lot of sales skills shining through, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to hire you. It's just something I noticed. We do train for the sales part, but, I don't know yet. I still have another applicant to interview, but I'll get back to you and let you know. Well, all I heard was you didn't get the fucking job. Yeah, you're done. I left the interview that day feeling so depleted, so emotionally drained and exhausted, just sick to my stomach, tucked my tail between my legs, walked all the way back to the halfway house with my head down, just practically in tears. I run into him and I was like, it's over. I didn't get the job. And I go back up into my room, and I was literally so physically exhausted from the emotional drain that it had on me that it was like, I think noon, and I just went straight to bed, didn't wake up until the next morning. And then started to process the reality of the situation and come to terms with it and try to figure out like, hey, what's my next plan of action? Because obviously it wasn't meant to be with Microsoft, and I'll just continue working on my degree or, going to school, get my degree, figure it out in 4 years when I graduate with my bachelor's. And 2 days go by, starting to feel better. I'm like, okay, it's fine. It is what it is. And then all of a sudden my phone rings, and I kid you not, Microsoft is on the caller ID. It literally says Microsoft. And I'm looking at my phone in disbelief, like, why the fuck are they calling me? I answer, hello? Hi, is this Shelley Winner? I was like, yes. hi, this is the recruiter from Microsoft. I'm like, hi. She's like, well, I'm calling because we want to extend the offer to you. And I was like, I screamed. I was like, what? No way. Like, I could not believe it. And I could not even hold it in. She started laughing because she had never heard somebody like with such a, excited response before. And she's like, wow, this is like, honestly, this is the most amazing response I've ever had. I was like, yeah, well, I honestly did not think I was getting this job, and I just came to the realization that it wasn't going to happen. And you surprising me with this job offer, just you don't even know. Like you just made my whole day, my whole week, my whole year. Like this is crazy. And so I was like, yes, I'll accept the job. And I get off the phone with her and I start running down the hallway. And, the halfway house is like this old hotel room back in the day. And so all the girls were on one floor. And so I'm running down the hallway yelling, you guys, wake up, everyone. I got the job. I got the job. I run downstairs. I'm like finding my case manager and the job developer and all the staff there. You guys, because everybody knew the situation because I had, told everybody. And I'm like, you guys, I got the job. Oh my God. And call my family. It was a very surreal moment for me. And that's when I knew, and that was another moment in my life, like, wow, like, like that literally, like I manifested this, you know what I mean? Like this was supernatural. This, just everything that led up to this, like the fact that I had a 50-50 chance of going to San Francisco, the fact that I accidentally found out about this law, the fact that my job offer got rescinded and then I was the first one to, step forward and leverage this law, the fact that, headquarters had never heard about this. The fact, all this stuff was like it was all, it was too odd not to be God,
That's so cool.
Yeah. And I just remember showing up to work my first day, just glowing, just immense gratitude because I had broken past that barrier. And I knew that this job, even though it was a retail store and I was making, minimum wage, but I knew the potential of what this job had to be and that it was going to change the trajectory of my life. It wasn't just a job to me, and so I came to work every day just so excited to be there, so grateful. And I quickly, because of that kind of attitude and mentality, I was highly favored, by my managers. I was the one always, highest sales, getting picked to go on special trips, top performer, and before I knew it, somebody in corporate heard about me and reached out and said, hey, I heard about you. And here's the other thing I manifested too, because I didn't know how I was going to get into corporate, because even though I still got my foot in the door and I still worked for Microsoft, you still needed a degree to get one of these jobs, right? And I was like, shit, I don't know how that's going to happen. I'm telling you what, dude, like it's crazy. Like you start operating at a higher frequency and an opportunity just start opening up for you magically. Like you don't even need to figure this shit out. It'll just like God will figure it all out for you. And these opportunities will open up. So everybody that I work with wants to get into corporate, right? That's like the goal. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I didn't know what type of job to apply for. And then one day I get that email and it's a sales manager, an executive, sales manager, but he was an executive, pretty high up in the company. And he reaches out and says, hey, I heard about you. I just want to let you know we have a sales opening, or we have a job opening for a sales position on our modern workplace team. I didn't know what the hell modern workplace was, what that meant. But he's like, would you be interested in interviewing? Hell yeah, I would be. I didn't know what the hell, I didn't think I was going to do, pass the interview, but I was like, you know what, whatever, I'm going for it. Like, I'm not going to squander this opportunity. So, excuse me. So what I do is, he's like, great. Here's this guy that I need you to connect with. He works for me. He'll help you, get the interview and everything set up. So I go meet with him in person. I need to clear my throat.
Yeah, take a sip of water. Yeah.
You can edit that out.
No, it's okay. It's natural,
Okay, good. So, so I connect with this guy, and he goes, listen, there's this methodology that we use here. It's called the Challenger Sales Methodology. There's a book that was written about it. He's like, go read the book. On the back of the book, there's some interview questions. Those are gonna be your interview questions. Fucking kid you not, dude. Swear to God. So I go back, I read the book, I fucking highlight, I'm, note taking. I'm studying this book like I'm getting ready for like my final exam in college. Because there was no way that I was not going to show up to this interview prepared, especially not having any B2B. It was a B2B sales job, right? So I was going to show up as prepared as I could and do the best that I could. And so when I showed up to the interview, I was so nervous. He dropped me off. And it was right there in a financial district, this big, huge skyrise building. And I'm just walking up the steps and I'm looking up, and I pause and I take a moment to look up, and I see the big Microsoft sign, and I'm like, is this really fucking happening? Like, wow. And I was just like, God, thank you. I walk up to my interview and I'm ready. I've got all the, the book. I've read the book. I know it, from front page to back page. Like, I've studied the whole thing. Right. And, so I go in, and sure as shit, they ask me the questions that were on the back of the book, and I knew how to answer them. Now let me back it up real quick too. This other crazy thing happened. So, because I knew I was getting ready to do this interview, I found other modern workplace B2B sales reps that worked on this guy's team and reached out to them via LinkedIn and set up one-on-one informationals. So this one guy that I met with, because I needed his help in learning more about the role and, what the day-to-day was, and, what to expect in the interview. And he also helped me with the interview questions. But I went and met with him, and apparently he had looked me up because I had started doing public speaking at that point and sharing my story on different platforms. And I had posted some stuff on like LinkedIn and social media. Well, he looked me up and watched a couple of my presentations. So he knew by the time we met up at the office, he already knew my story. And so he greets me. We go into the conference room. I sit down. He sits down. He says, before you say anything, I just want you to know I watched some of your presentations on my drive home, or my drive here this morning. And I'm like, oh, fuck. And he goes, nobody knows this, but I'm also formerly incarcerated. But it didn't come up on the background check because it was so long ago. But I've never told anybody. And I'm going to do everything that I can to help you get this job.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So I had his support. I had the guy, Jason, who was the sales manager, the executive. I had his support. I had the guy that reports to him. I had his support. Like, all these people were rooting for me, right? I go into the interview, and who interviews me? That guy, the manager, and then two other folks. And I'm doing okay. Like, I'm holding my own. Like, I'm confident, because I had prepped, I prepared. They were asking the questions that I, prepared for. And I think I did pretty well, but still, like, it was still kind of like, wow, like, are they really going to hire me? Like, I have no B2B sales experience, but I'm like, whatever. At least I get to go through this process. And at least I can say, you know what? I interviewed at Microsoft, because you know how many people who don't have criminal records wish they could just, interview for Microsoft or have that opportunity. And here I was, having this opportunity. So I was just like, okay, well, if I get the job or if I don't, I can still, pat myself on the back. Well, I end up not getting the job. And what's interesting, though, is that they said that I interviewed so well that there was a job that they knew I would be perfect for, and that the job wasn't open. They had to get the budget for the job. But if I was willing to wait 6 months, they would open up this role. It was called a Surface Technology Solutions Professional, or Surface TSP for short, where they would bring me over. It was more of like an entry-level position in corporate, where I got to work with the B2B sales rep, and I would be their technical go-to person. And I was like, yeah, sure. I swear to God, 6 months to the T, I get an email like, hey, you ready to come over to corporate?
Wow.
But here's the thing. I have to do the background check again. And but this time around, I've got all these people on my side. And, I've got the sales guy, I've got the manager, I've got his manager, I've got my hiring manager, because they, she was fully supportive as well. So I've got all these people rooting for me, and they know my situation. They know my story. So they were proactive about the situation. They reached out to HR. They're like, hey, listen, this girl's, her background check's going to get flagged. We're giving you a heads up, but we still want to move forward with the hire. She already works for us. So just please pass her through so that we can get her onboarded and started. Well, the background check results come back flagged. And they're like, hail to the nah, we are not hiring this girl. Retail is different than corporate. We cannot bring her over to corporate. There's no way this is going to happen. And I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe I'm going through this again, right? And they all just like did everything they could in their power. Like, my manager tried everything. She had meetings with the legal team. She had meetings with HR, and she was just like, they were like, nope, nope, nope. So finally she contacts Jason, who's the executive. He's the one on the PBS special. I don't know if you watched that. But he's the one when that came onto the PBS show to talk about how he helped me. But yeah, he got a meeting scheduled, and he went in there and just completely reframed their thinking about hiring me. Talked about how we're a company that has, we talk about growth mindset, right? We have, our mission is to empower every person, every organization on this earth to achieve more. But how are we empowering this woman to achieve her best, her true potential? This is a past, that this is not who she is today. And I've been hiring talent for over 25 years, and I know when I see talent, and I think she would be an asset to this company, and we should really consider about thinking about giving her this chance, this second chance. And by the time he got done, and I don't know everything he said, but I know, but by the time he got done, they were like, wow, we'd never thought about it from that perspective. So we'll go ahead and give her a second chance.
That's awesome.
I know.
So you became a tech exec.
So I became a sales, or I worked with the B2B sales rep. I wasn't an executive, but I got my foot in the door, and it was all, really thanks to the help of these four individuals that just didn't give up on me, that truly believed in me. And myself too, I for having the courage to go through this, because I think a lot of people would have just given up and said, you know what, this is too much, I can't deal with this. But I had the ability to persevere, and I'm so glad I did. So I've been at the company now for 8 years, and I've had 4 promotions. And I moved on to another role. So I'm now a surface specialist. So I do B2B sales. So I sell our computers to large corporations. We have a whole lineup of devices: Surface Laptop, Surface Pro, and I go in there and I try to get companies to buy our computers for their employees. And I absolutely love my job. Microsoft has treated me so good. Even though they were hesitant to hire me at first, I really thought there was going to be some retaliation done, or like I was going to get treated differently, but that was not the case at all. At all. They opened their arms. They have embraced me. They have treated me as their own, and just all my coworkers have been just loving and supportive. They're actually really inspired by my story. And I haven't all of that fear that I had about like being treated differently, none of that came true. So that just goes to show you how much fear is a liar,
And it's more of a mindset thing in these corporations. Like when I was at Whole Foods, it took me a little bit to get in the door, and I got in the door, and hard work moves you up the ladder.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like once people in the higher up positions can get over the felony aspect and your past and judging by your past, which could be applied to anything in life. Like some people treat a man or a woman that was in a previous relationship as something, that's the same way they treat someone that has a felony or whatever the case is. There's an analogy for everything.
Yeah.
Once you get over that, that mental aspect of it, and the person's a genuinely good, hardworking person, then you can rise through the ranks.
Exactly.
Too.
Exactly. And so this was new territory for them, and they'd never been down this road. And so it was, but they really embraced me and have made it, made things right, and they even started a program. They joined the Second Chance Business Coalition, making a public statement about being a fair chance employer. They started a program where they specifically bring in underserved communities, and formerly incarcerated being one of them, or they train them specifically for like jobs at Microsoft. So a lot has changed, and they went public with my story. They allowed PBS to do, a segment, PBS NewsHour to do a segment, and share my story with the world. And they're super proud of me. I remember they told the producer, they're like, we just want you to know that we're so proud of Shelley, and we're so grateful to have her working for us.
It's so cool.
Yeah, isn't that so cool? And another really cool thing too, and I said I've had 4 promotions. Well, in 2022, I finished as their number 1 surface seller in the entire world.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yep.
And your story's so fascinating, and it's not even the tip of the iceberg. Like there's another fascinating aspect to your story, which is where your husband, who's sitting in this room right now, fits into all this.
Yeah.
And this has been such a great episode. I feel like we should, for the first time ever, like on the podcast, package it in as one episode. Have him come in here into your seat and talk about the halfway house aspect while also sharing your story, and make it, like one big episode, if that's okay with you guys. I think it would do really well and perform really well.
Yeah.
Does that work for you guys?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Cool. We'll take a quick bathroom break.
Okay.
Cool. All right, Jeremiah, you're in the hot seat. This is our first ever combined episode. You were just listening to Shelley's, whole interview just now that we were doing, and she made some pointing at you, and she showed the audience that you're in the room. Now, you guys met at a halfway house.
Yep.
Now, they allow men and women in a federal halfway house? Because at mine, we didn't have any women. I wish there was some women there, but there was not any women.
So, yeah, it depends. Not all are co-ed, but it just so happened that I got sent to San Francisco down the Tenderloin, and that was co-ed. So there was federal and state inmates and men and women. So, and I didn't know that until I got there, but it's a funny story because like how I found out really was I literally just got out of federal prison. I did 6 years, was in Lompoc, and then I got sent to FCI Phoenix, and I got released from FCI Phoenix, and man, had 16, 18 hours to get from Phoenix to the halfway house. They give you that time. If you don't show up,
I remember that, yeah.
And you're supposed to take a bus. They give you a bus ticket, but there was this girl I was talking to, and I got the bus ticket, got released. She met me at the Greyhound station and drove me all the way back to San Francisco. So you're going through the nerves, you're in shock from getting out. Everything's moving fast, and I haven't slept. I've been up all night just stressing to get there, and I'm exhausted. And I'm sitting in a chair. They're making me wait to intake. It's like 5 in the morning. It's like butt cracking down. I'm exhausted in this plastic chair, and I'm hating my life. I'm just like, just get me through intake, get me a room, let me go to sleep. And I'll never forget, man, like the whole halfway house was dead. Just like the monitor that monitors people coming in and out, and me sitting in this chair for a couple hours. It seemed like forever. And you hear the elevator ding. And I can see it in my mind. It's crazy, bro. Elevator dings, and here comes this girl, a little sweat outfit, just had a little pep in her step, right? And she looks at me and she smiles, and she signs out and she leaves. And I'll never forget, man, I said to myself, I could live here. And it was Shelley. And she doesn't remember at all, obviously, but that was, that's definitely a memorable moment. And so I get in the halfway house, get settled in, and it took a couple months before she really knew who I was. And how we really first started talking, it's funny. It's breaking rules in the halfway house kind of story. But in the halfway house, and I'm sure you're not allowed to. You can be friends in the halfway house, and you got all these people in this communal type environment trying to work and figure life out and whatever, and you can talk and do whatever in the halfway house, but you're not allowed to fraternize outside the halfway house. It's a violation. Like you get written up for it. You can go back to prison for it. And it's such a stupid rule because we're human beings, right? You make connections, especially when you get out, nobody in this place. A lot of people aren't even from there. Of course, you're going to gravitate to other people. But so I had said hello to her a few times here and there and smiled, and I thought she was, gorgeous. But I was coming back from work, and one of the guys came out and saw me on the street walking to the halfway house, and he's like, "Hey, bro, they're checking cell phones. So if you got anything on your phone, get rid of it, delete it off your phone before you get there, because they're going to take your phone and go through it." And so I'm like, cool, right on, good looking out. And so I go through my phone, and I'm good. I get to the halfway house, check in, like, "We need your phone." I'm like, "Oh, for what?" Surprise, give him my phone. I know I'm good. And I go in, and I go into like the communal kitchen area. And now, mind you, Shelley was always so positive and so a smile. Like, she's like on a mission to take over the world, and you could see it. You could feel it with her, and it was definitely one of the things that attracted me to her. But on this particular day, when I walked in, I turned the corner and I see her, and she's standing against this wall, and she is like distraught. And so my natural instinct was, I was just like, hey, like, are you okay? What's wrong? Like, it was shocking to see her like that. And she's like, oh, they took our phones. And she was worried because she had gone to Golden Gate Bridge, I believe it was, with one of our friends, Amber. She's still our friend today. But they had become friends in there, and they had taken pictures, and she had put it on Facebook. And, she was really concerned about that, especially because Shelley was on RDAP. So she had gotten a year off for the drug treatment program. And if she violated, they'll take that year. You have to go do that year, right? And so I'm like, well, let's think about this. And so I was like, I got an idea. Let's go log into your Facebook from my phone, because I don't remember how the timeline worked, but I'd gotten my phone back, right? It was all good. And I was like, well, we'll just go on Facebook. We'll delete it or we'll deactivate your account and they'll never find it, right? And so we're talking, we go sit outside on this bench, and we're devising this plan on how to save her. I'm trying to make sure I'm helping her figure this out. And they had given me this paper showing that my phone had been checked and whatever. And she's sitting on this bench next to me, and she's reading through it, and I'm like, yeah. And I said, feel free to memorize that phone number. Shot my shot, right? And I mean, to hear her tell it, she said that she had never really noticed me until then, and she realized that I had just hit on her. And she said that she got she was freaking out, but it was the weirdest feeling, because at the same time of being worried of going back to prison, she got butterflies because she realized how cute I was, right?
And most people like in her position aren't necessarily ready to date or even thinking about dating or even emotions or
Nope.
anything in that. I've talked to a lot of women in recovery houses and stuff,
Mhm.
and they've cut that all off. In fact, it's kind of, frowned upon to even go down that route.
Absolutely. For sure, like I said, she was on a mission. There was every dude in there was trying to holler at her because she's beautiful. And some of those dudes are pretty creepy with their game, right? They're just total douchebags, right? But it just worked out. Like, I wasn't forceful, I wasn't whatever, but I let her know, like, hey, you're amazing. We could talk if you're interested. And we became friends. And I had at the time, the girl that I had gotten out, it was a pen pal from prison. And I got out with nobody. Like, all my family, like my mom had passed away, shortly before I'd gotten out of federal prison. I'm in a new city trying to start over, not go back to Reno where I'm from. And so there's this girl that, has a house, a place to parole to, and, has got me my phone, whatever I needed. But she really was, this girl was like kind of crazy. And she wasn't somebody, it was more opportunistic than me wanting to be with her. So then I meet Shelley, and I'm like, holy crap, like, now this is like real, like I really like this girl, but we became friends first. But it was hard to like not be attracted to one another. And there was, slow flirting, and just, she was really there for me to hear all this crazy stuff that this girl was doing outside the halfway house. And it was really organic, slow, natural, and meaningful.
Was Shelley curious about what you went to prison for? Like, was that in one of your initial conversations?
Yeah, I don't know if it was initial, but yeah, she definitely, like, I'm a pretty open book, and I've done some really shitty stuff in my life, a lot of shitty stuff, and hurt people. And but I have no problem owning that and being really forthcoming about it. And I think that Shelley saw who I was at that time and saw my heart beyond anything that there was on paper or whatever. And so, but yeah, that definitely, of course, comes up. She, want to know, are you in there for freaking multiple rapes? That probably would have been a problem, right? But
What did you tell her? How did you explain your charges to her? That way the audience gets to understand you through
So,
how you told her,
I think when she asked me, what'd you go to prison for? I said, well, guns. She was like, yeah. I said, yeah, a lot of guns. And I did tell her the story that in 2010, I started, I'd been to prison before in Nevada when I was 19. I did 6 years, and for a robbery with a deadly weapon. I almost killed a kid. I think I really kind of started with her, and I told her everything. And, told her, I got out and, went to college, got a degree, was trying to walk the fence, really. I figured if I could do good and bad, I can go to college and still go to the club and sell drugs. It was all good, right? And then 2010 was when I started using really like hard drugs again. I dabbled in them here and there through the course of all my years, but I was really hardcore addicted to pain pills. And actually at the time when Shelley met me, I still was. The feds even gave me legal. I was getting Percocet while I was in feds for my back. I had major back surgery. And so when I got out, I'm still on pain pills. Like there was red flags. Like I'm lucky Shelley even was like, I don't even know, because she's the way that her mind works and how driven she was. She really saw something in me way deeper than what was on the surface, because there clearly I was probably not the best person for her at all at that time. I know it wasn't in those regards, right? But yeah, I told her straight up that I'm strung out on pain pills. I started using meth, selling. It was what it was. I started pushing coke. I needed the money. Money started becoming a problem, and I had a plug on really good, really cheap coke. And next thing you know, it's like half pound a day of coke. And then an ex-girlfriend of mine, she was moving meth at the same time. And I was like, look, you're on parole. Just keep it here. Like, you're good. Like, my house is safe. And I'm seeing all this meth coming in and out of my safe every day and all this money. And I said, well, damn, I'd start slinging some meth. And then I made the mistake one day of, was exhausted. I had no more energy to go run around and unplug all these people with this coke. And this girl's like, well, you want to hit this pipe of meth? Wake up. And I said, yeah, I got to get through today. And that was it. And so I'm strung out on pain pills. Now I'm smoking meth. Still coke here and there. Like it was a free for all, really. And that turned into like the dynamic of having people around when you sell weed, the type of people, that was always been my thing. All me and my boys growing up, we just sold weed through our whole life, tons of it. But when you start dealing with people doing meth, it's a completely different crowd. And it literally took like 6 months from when I started back in the meth game until I got hit by the ATF. I mean, it went hardcore fast, because I'm the guy that, like, if I'm doing something, I'm doing something, and I'm going all out.
I'm
like,
the same way.
Like
Yeah.
all the way out hardcore. And so it was just a matter of days, and I got all this meth. I was a freaking mess, dude. And I mean, we're rolling around strapped up, bulletproof vest on, just doing, like, I wore a vest all the time. It was nuts. And it took a few months, and I decided, like, I see these people around slamming meth, and I'm like, what's so special about slamming it? Like, I don't get it. So I just wanted to try it just to see. And I personally didn't at least in my mind, I didn't think there was much of a difference, but I was like, well, but that's an easier way. Cool. So then now I'm slamming methamphetamine, and that's like, then just shit went crazy. And there's a guy that I had gone to elementary school with, and he's definitely not like the type of dude that I would have in my circle of people. But he was bringing all this stolen stuff over and giving him small amounts of meth for it, and I was coming up on all these things, and he was just grimy, dude. I knew he was just, this dude is like shady, dirty, didn't really have much conscience at all. And I would deal with him more and more here and there, and it just kind of turned into, like, I didn't want him around. I didn't really like him. We didn't like each other, but my addiction and the level of stupid, crazy shit I was willing to do, you know, he always had an opportunity for some kind of crazy come up. And what had happened towards the end was he was robbing people, and I actually, like, there was a drug dealer that him and I went and robbed this person with him, and I was okay with that though, because my thought process on it was like, look, if you're in the game and you're living outside the law, like, we don't talk to the police, we don't mess with the police. If you're selling dope and you're carrying guns and you're doing crazy shit, like, we're in a hole. That's our, like, yeah, everything's fair game. If you can rob me, if you can get me, then I got, right? And I'll just have to get you back or not. And it's this vice versa. But people that are normal human beings that live tax-paying lives that are not in the game, they're civilians. That's off limits, right? Well, he wasn't that way. And he ended up robbing a childhood friend's, like, mother. Like, they went and did a home invasion. She's like 70 something years old, and I didn't know about this at the time, but it was brutal. Like, they pistol whipped her. It was terrible. You know, when I learned about it later. And then shortly after, there was a childhood friend of mine, one of my best friends growing up, his mom, like, this guy, he knew us from the past. Like, we sold him and his buddy some weed. They had this little crew so he kind of knew that my friend's dad, when we were growing up, had guns. He was like this total nature man. And he was like, hey, like, when we were hanging out later, years later, he was like, hey man, like, I know there's guns there. And I'm like, dude, his dad's been dead for almost 2 decades. There's no guns there. You don't want to rob this house. You don't want to do it. Well, he did. And he home invaded her. And when that happened, like, I knew about it and I didn't say anything, right? And I was definitely implicated in that. And there's a lot of shame and guilt that I carried with that. And it put me in, like, this pretty deep depression, even deeper than I already was in. My life was turning to shit. I'm on drugs. This is not where I'm wanting to go with my life. And within the course of about 2 weeks from that, he had this inside information on this guy, that there was a crew that was going to go rob this guy that was an old gun collector. I think he, like, owned a pawn shop, and the guy was in love with this hooker that he was her chick for a few years. And the guy had given her an ultimatum. He said, look, like, here's this 7-carat or whatever it was diamond ring. Marry me and leave this life. You know, be my girl and only my girl, or we're done. So this girl went back to her boyfriend and was like, look, the well's dried up with this guy. He's done paying, being my sugar daddy, so whatever. And gave the information to this crew of guys. A couple of them I had known from prison before, that they were setting up a crew to go hit this guy's house and get him, because there was a lot of guns and a lot of jewelry. And so they had asked this guy that my co-defendant, to be one of those guys. And like, it's crazy. My co-defendant, he was just super ghetto. I mean, he looked kind of like somebody out of like Hills Have Eyes. He just was like, he's just a negative, just not good person at all, right? And he's all for it, but he's super shady. So instead of it, he agrees to do this lick with them to go do this robbery, and they're planning it for a few weeks down the road. So he agrees to it, but then he takes that information. He's like, I'm going to go do it first without him. I'm going to get it all. And he comes to me, he's like, hey, Jeremiah, look, there's this robbery. I want to go to this home invasion. There's all these guns. And I'm like, you're freaking insane, dude. Like, this guy doesn't even, this is not the get down. I don't do anything like this. There's no way. That is super jacked up, you know? And so what happens is that night he asked me, he said, he's like, hey, well, go do this with me tonight. I'm like, nah, bro, you gotta go. Like, I didn't even like him around my house, really. Because I was ready for him to rob me, like, for real. Like, I did not trust him. And I said, hey, check it out. I'm gonna take you over to your spot, and like, I got shit to go do. So I did. I took him home that night, and I went out, hit the strip club, went and picked up some money, and I came home. I go to sleep, probably midnight, right? And like 5 o'clock in the morning, there's I have my flat screen at the foot of my bed and all my surveillance cameras around it, right? Total normal tweaker shit. But I get woken up to just this bang and bang, 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 and my dogs are barking. And I look up and I look at the screen, and this fool's standing there on my doorstep, wide-eyed, looking at my camera, banging. And I'm like, I get up, I go downstairs, and by the time I had gotten up and gone downstairs, this dude is at my front door with an armload of assault rifles. And the sun's starting to come up in my neighborhood, and I'm like, what the fuck in my house? What are you doing? And he's like, look, bro, I hit this lick. I got all these guns. Here's the deal, man. Nobody knows that you and I kick it at all, because I wasn't part of his group of people. And he's like, look, man, we keep everything here. I'll split it down the middle with you 50-50. And I saw dollar signs, right? I'm like, look, I didn't do a robbery, but I'm not going to pass up and all these guns, and like, think about all the shit we can get with the cartel hookup in Cali for all that. Like, yeah. So I agreed to it, helped him bring in all these guns. And I'm like, whose car is this that you have out front? Like, he's like, oh, no, it's the homies. It's the homies. So he's like, hey, follow me. So we bring in all the guns and jewelry, and there's a lot. There's tons of handguns, assault rifle. There's a 50 cal, like, no joke. And he's like, hey, take me to drop this car off. So we go drop this car off, and we go meet up with somebody. I think we went and got high and came back, and we just like split the guns. It was like, literally, we're looking at everything. It was like, you pick one, I pick one. And we did. And there's jewelry, like, you would not believe how much jewelry. I think they said estimate like $500,000 in jewelry is what the cops said or something. And all these guns, which were serious guns. Some were fully auto. In Nevada, this guy had licenses to own some pretty crazy stuff, right? I mean, there's MP5s with suppressors, like shit you see on it was just, it was so crazy. And so we do all that, and his plan is he's going to go home and take this ring, that engagement ring, right? It's this beautiful, massive diamonds. He's like, I need to go home. I'm going to go ask my girl to marry me. And so he takes a couple of the guns with him, and I take him and I drop him off at his house. And that was probably around noon. So from 5 a.m. to noon, right? And my ex-girlfriend at the time comes over, and she's super square. She's like trying to get me like out of this life completely. She didn't know what to do. Like, it was all bad, right? And so she doesn't know that there's like a snowboard bag filled with guns in the laundry room. She has no clue. And I get a call around 2. It wasn't too long after I dropped him off, maybe 2 hours. And this girl that we knew in his apartment complex is like, hey, we got eyes on John Boy, and the police are arresting him. And I'm like, fuck, right? But they said, they were looking for him for a domestic battery on his neighbor. And they're like, no, it's just the 2 cops that are normally around the neighborhood. It doesn't seem like any big deal. So I'm thinking, if it was for these guns, it'd be a freaking SWAT team, right? But now I'm freaking out. So I'm pit in my stomach, dude. I know something's wrong. I know, like, just that sixth sense. I just knew that this was not going to turn out good. And I tell my ex-girlfriend, I say, hey, look, like, I need you to go home. You know, like, I really, I can't tell you why, but I need you to go home. And she's freaking out, but she does. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to get all the guns out of my house. And I had 2 properties that I was renting on my property. And there was this girl that lived in this back house. And I told her, I was like, hey, look, like, I need to hide all this shit in your house. Like, if the cops come, I know they have a search warrant for my house, not yours, whatever. So she helps me get all the guns into the back house. Now I'm thinking I'm good, right? But I'm still like, I'm on drugs. So every time I come outside, I'm thinking I'm hearing a helicopter above me. But when you slam methamphetamine, you get this weird sound in your ears at times. And I'm like, no, you're just tripping. You're just tripping. But I swear I could hear a helicopter all freaking day. But I look in the sky, there's nothing there. And I never left the house that day. I stayed home all day, all evening. I had a good friend of mine's wife comes over, and I'm like, hey, do you got any dope? Right? And because I had thankfully at that time I didn't have anything in the house, really, maybe a small amount that I had done that day. And she's like, no, but I can go get some. So she leaves, and I don't hear from her again. I'm like, why is she flaking on me, right? I'm like, what the fuck? So I try to call her. I'm like, well, thanks, Flake, whatever. And my buddy shows up. Actually, my buddy had shown up, she showed up, and my buddy showed up right after. And he goes and he leaves to go get some dope. And he comes back and brings me some dope. And then he leaves. I try to get a hold of him again that evening. I can't get a hold of him. And I'm just like, well, dude, this sucks. Like, this is just a terrible day. And everybody's flaking on me. I'm here by myself. And I decided, like, I'm going to be done for the night. And I go downstairs midnight. It was literally like right on the stroke of midnight. And I go downstairs to lock my front door. And I had this big, like, sunroom with all glass in the front. So it was a glass door with, like, blinds, you know, little click metal blinds that you can, like, push down and look through, you know, tweaker shit, right? And I hear this diesel engine. And on this street, it sounded like a semi was coming up the street. And I click the window down, I look, and I see a Bearcat, SWAT Bearcat, coming up with lights on. And I'm just like, right? I go upstairs, and I'm looking out of my front yard on the surveillance cameras, and I see, boom, boom, more armored trucks pull up, all SWAT, different vehicles. And then they're just sitting there, like, for a long time. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, I don't see, nobody's rushing me. And I stand up and have this big bay window on the side of my bedroom. And it's pitch black, it's midnight. And I see this glint. I look over, and there's a freaking sniper. His scope, I caught the glint of his scope. I'm like, what the fuck? So I creep down, and then I hear pow, pow. And two of my cameras go out. And then another shot rings through, and the bullet goes right through the wall where I'm at. And the sharpshooters were shooting out my surveillance cameras. And it took them, it's comical now, but it took them like 3 shots to get the last camera. And they weren't even able to break it. They just knocked it off its pedestal. So I was able to see everything out front, and then they hit it. And all I could see was my flower bed because it was like swinging, and I can see flowers. And as soon as they got the last camera out, they came over the intercom. Like, Jeremiah Dupre, Reno SWAT team, come out with your hands up or we will use deadly force against you. And I remember thinking to myself, like, don't we get to negotiate some shit? Like, throwing a phone, like the movies, right? Like, I really was like, what do you mean you're going to kill me if I don't come out? You're just telling me you're going to kill me if I do not come out front of the house. So, dude, I'll never forget, man. I'm sitting on my bedroom floor and I have my dogs. They're all sitting there with me and they can just sense it and they're freaking out and they're just huddled with me. And I had a half a gram of meth, took it, and I did a shot, half a gram of meth, and I literally had one cigarette left in a pack. And I sat there and I smoked a cigarette, and I just loved on my dogs. And I walked out the front door, man, and I'll never forget. I opened the door, I looked down, I got like 30 beads on me, dude, and I can't see nothing. And, instructed me to come out and, zip tied me, put me in the back of a SWAT. And at that point, dude, I knew I was so hit. Like, but I'm thinking, the gun's in the back, but like, I'm in trouble no matter what. Like, this is no joke. But I knew what they were going to do to the house, that they didn't know if somebody else was in there, right? So they're going to have to go in hot and clear this house. And all I was thinking was, don't flashbang my dogs. Just please don't flashbang my dogs, right? And so my ex-girlfriend's best friend's husband was Reno SWAT team. And I'm like, and I'm yelling, I'm telling all the cops, I'm like, just where's Jerry? Where's Jerry? Look, I know, just like, he knows my dogs. Don't hurt my dogs. Just, I'm begging him not to hurt my dogs. And they're like, they had me like hog tied, like zip tied in the back and on my feet. And they're like carrying me behind cars, axles down the road, because they didn't know if someone else was in the house with the, I mean, I could have shot through. I didn't know what I had at the time, but the gun, that 50 cal, could have gone through one of those armored trucks, right? Mm-hmm. So they get me about halfway down the block, and under the street light, man, I see like 20 plainclothes dudes, all with different vests on. And bro, there was every alphabet you can imagine. Like, there was Reno, Sparks, sheriffs, ATF, DEA, FBI. They all were there. And I just was like, fuck that. You're hit. You're done. And I just kept, the only thing I could think about, dude, like, seriously, was don't flashbang my dogs. Like, just don't. They do not deserve to get, that's no joke, right? And they were able to find Jerry, and they actually were able to get the dogs out before, because they were able to get them into the side shed. And I didn't see it, but they blew the house to shit, right? But what I didn't know was that they had a search warrant for the whole property. And there was a helicopter, because as soon as they shot out my cameras too, the helicopter dropped down. It had been there, super altitude, watching the house the whole day. So I was totally cracked. They take me up, take me to the sheriff's office. And this douchebag ATF agent that had busted a friend of mine before. I literally saw this ATF agent. I don't care what they say. Like, this dude was undercover trying to bust this dude I knew. And I watched that dude like snorting blow off of a freaking stripper. Like, I saw it, and I knew he was dirty. And he walks in, he's like, the fuck I am. I said, yeah, you're a fucking fed. And I was like, I'm not saying I need a lawyer. I'm not talking about shit. And they're like, look, we already got the guns. We got this. Like, he told us everything. So what had happened is literally, John Boy literally, how fast they set up an undercover on my house, he must have told them everything on the way to jail. Like, but I really didn't think, I'm like, he's not going to say anything, because if he tells, he's telling himself for a life sentence. He's got multiple violent felony priors, and he did a kidnapping home invasion. So what actually transpired is he went to this gun collector's house, and he went in by himself with this sawed-off shotgun that he had gotten from me. Woke the guy up. The guy had a Sig Sauer under the pillow. Tried to grab it. He got it from him. Woke him up. Woke his brother up. And then I guess their 90-year-old father lived with them. It was like old World War II. They tied him up with phone cord, and he made the two brothers load all the guns into this car in the garage and all the jewelry, and then made them get in the car and drive him away. And he kicked them out in the desert and then drove to my house. Now, what I didn't know, and what was the most genius thing I've ever heard, I'm being super sarcastic, but he had this girl drive him there. This crackhead girl that he knew. He had her drive him to the place, and he left his phone and his wallet in the car with her, and he went and did this robbery. And when he was leaving, he, like, I guess he said he hand signaled her to, like, come on, and she was too busy smoking crack in the car to see him. So when he leaves, he kicks these guys out. They go back to the house when the police, somebody saw him on the side of the road, called the police. The sheriffs took him right back to their house, and the whole thing started going crazy, right? And the guy's like, I don't know who that is in that car, but they don't belong here. They went over, got her, found all of his stuff in the car. It was instantly busted. Instantly. And so, yeah, man, they got me, and it was, what am I gonna do? I'm hit. I'm done. But I'm very fortunate that a good friend of mine, his dad, always was like our crew, like our weed crew. Me and my homeboys, like, one of my friend that's part of our crew's dad is the best. He passed away, but was the best lawyer in Reno. And so whenever anything went down, we had like awesome representation immediately. And it was like 3 a.m. I'll never forget. Dennis shows up at the jail in his pajamas. He's like, you didn't fucking say anything, did you? What the fuck did you do? And I'm like, oh man, but I'm in trouble. He's like, no shit, bro. Like, really? So I got charged with the guns. And then, they put us in both of us in suicide watch cells because we were in so much trouble. And within the course of the next few days, dude, I was getting pulled down to the interview room, and they would pull you in there, and for like 10, 12 hours, and just, you tell one group of cops, I need a lawyer, and they'd send some other detectives in asking about another case in Reno. Like, they brought every unsolved robbery you can think of to me, like, this looks like you. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? That's like a short Mexican dude. That ain't, but just, it was crazy. And, but my co-defendant, I'll never forget, I was in the interview room, and he was in another room up there at the same time. And I'll never forget, you could hear through the walls. And I could hear him, he yelled that he was like, fuck it, but it was his gun. And I'm like, this dude is just telling on me, like, I'm done. And then I was started to get ad booked. Like, what had happened we both were in so much trouble, but him especially, because he was doing like all these other elderly home invasions, and he just was telling them everything he could to get out of trouble. Like, he thought that he could snitch his way out of being in trouble, when that's not possible with what he did. But it was, I guess, worth a shot to him. And once he kind of ran out of credible stuff to tell on people for, then he started making stuff up and saying that I was with him. I was the mastermind of all this. He was trying to put everything off on me. And dude, they ad booked me on like 23 violent felonies, nasty, dirty felonies, like elderly home invasion. You don't go back to the joint with shit like that and be okay. That's, yeah, like, seriously. I think I went from like 300,000 cash only bail to like 2 million to 4 million to no bail. And it was, I'm like, my life is over. Like, the guns alone, like, Dennis told me, he said, look, man, the feds pick these up, you're doing 15. And I said, what do you mean if the feds pick this shit up? Like, ATF was there that night. We know they're picking this up. And so it took 15 months before everything worked itself out and I was sentenced to everything. But luckily, I'll give credit to the cops. They did their job, and they did a lot of DNA forensic stuff. None of my DNA was in any of the places. Victim statements didn't match up with what he was saying that I was there, right? And so all of these really heinous charges ended up going away. But I pled guilty in Nevada to ex-felon in possession of a firearm and conspiracy to commit a violent crime, because even though I didn't do the home invasion on my friend's mom, and I was aware of it, I was complicit in it, right? And I didn't tell the cops that he did it, right? So, and that one I had to own anyway. That was just terrible, right? Carried a lot of guilt for that, a lot of shame for a long time for that. I still do a little bit. I mean, I've forgiven myself, but that was a hard one for me to be okay with, for anybody to be okay with. But the crazy thing is, it's funny. My lawyer, Dennis, was an amazing attorney, amazing, but he was really, really shitty at explaining stuff to you. So he walks in one day and he tells me, he says, Jeremiah, and he's smiling. The feds picked it up. I'm like, what the fuck are you smiling for, Dennis? You said 15 years at least. He's like, oh, no. You're good. Bill Reed's your prosecutor. And I'm like, who the fuck is Bill? Like, what are you talking about, bro? Like, seriously? And he said, oh, no. Look, we were in the DEA together back in the day, and he owes me one. So and it's true, they do that, right?
Yeah, it's all political.
It's all. And so I was looking at at least 15 to 20, and they were able to get it down to where I pled guilty in the feds to ex-felon in possession of a firearm. It was just the one shotgun is what I actually convicted of, was the gun that I gave him. All those other guns aren't even on my PSI or on my forfeiture statement with the feds, with my indictment. And so when that happened, it got it down to I think my point structure was 7 to 10 or 8 to 10 or something, right? And when we went in, we argued 2 points off for this, 2 points off for that. The federal prosecutor never once objected in court, and I got down to 64 months. The judge sentenced me to.
When you told Shelley all of this, how did she react? Because I'm sure you told her the same exact story that you just told me.
I mean, I don't know. I don't think she was too. I mean, maybe in her mind she was a little blown away by it, but she could see how genuine I was about how I felt about the situation, because I really felt like a piece of shit. I just wanted to change my life. I was done with that life, and it caused me a lot of pain to carry the guilt, and just knowing that people were seriously affected by that was very hard for me. And I think that showed through with her, and I think she had a lot of grace and empathy, and it was just a beautiful thing to have her see me for who I was, or who I was at the time, not what I did.
Do you think you found her at the right timing? Where you needed someone like that in your life?
Absolutely. I completely believe in. I don't believe in coincidences, right? I believe that God definitely has his hand upon things, and when you're being sincere and you're walking in integrity and being truly authentic with your faults, and you're vulnerable, that when things come into your sphere of existence during those times, they're not coincidental, right? And I absolutely 100% believe that Shelley kind of saved me, because you got to realize that I was done with that life, but I got out of federal prison a freaking pill addict. I'm still strung out on opiates, whether it was legal or not. That shit's no joke. There's no difference. And my self-worth, I put up with a ton of very, very crazy stuff from this ex, the girl, the pen pal. It's crazy. She ended up stabbing me. But there was a lot of physical stuff from her, and extreme, just like very verbal abuse that I was okay with from her because I felt that I deserved it. I genuinely did not feel that I ever deserved to be happy. That everything negative that came to me for the rest of my life, I completely deserved it. I genuinely believe that. And so I was much more tolerant of just really shitty stuff than I normally would have been. I was at there was a huge crossroads in my life, because the first time when I got out of prison when I was 25, like I was ready to take over the world, man. You know, I'm working and making money, and all my homies are like doing all the, I get out and everybody's like, all this tons of weed, and we're at VIP in every club, and everybody wanted to know us. Every girl wanted to hang out with us. And I was ready to just build my life. And when I got out the last time, I was like, you're a piece of shit. Like, it doesn't matter if I served my time. I still wasn't okay with who I had been, and I didn't really know if I deserved to be happy. I didn't think I did. I wanted to, and I didn't want to live that life anymore, and I was done with that life for sure. But I didn't believe that I had it coming. I really didn't.
Now, you had the intention to sell those guns and make money off of it if you didn't get caught.
Oh, yeah.
How do you feel about those guns possibly getting into the wrong hands? I mean, we see, school shootings, we see acts of terrorism, all of that, from illegal gun purchases.
So at that time, I couldn't have given two shits. When you're so deep in your addiction, like, that never really crossed my mind. I can't say that let me retract that. I can't say that I didn't give two shits if that happened, because if I would have actually thought about that scenario, I probably would have had it.
Yeah, you didn't think about the collateral damage at the time.
No, that was never even a thought, right? So when you're in your addiction and just like it's all about me, right? Extremely selfish when you're really in the throes of your addiction like that. And it's just all about the coming up, like getting more, getting money, and yeah, I mean, I know for a fact that there was already a dude on the way with a lot of meth, and those guns would have possibly gone back, been somewhere in California on the streets, furthering cartel violence type stuff, guaranteed. And then the rest of them, who knows, probably the same in some capacity, and like Shelley said earlier, like my experience with federal prison was not Dublin federal prison, right? Federal prison, like I remember when I was younger, everybody's like, oh, the feds are awesome. Like, you want to go to the feds, right? Like state prison guys were like, dude, the feds. Some of those guys, when I got to the feds, I was like, dude, if I see one of those guys ever again for saying that, we got some problems, because the feds sucked, man. Federal government could care two shits about you. And it makes sense when you think about it, because like when I was in the state, there's regulatory stuff, and then you have the feds come in when they don't do what they're supposed to do, right? But when you get into those federal prisons and those gates close, who's telling the feds what to do? There's nobody overseeing the way that they treat people in the federal prison. And like the medical, I watched a guy lose his leg over an ingrown toenail from lack of medical. I watched guys, one of my best friends, Brandon, he's deaf in one ear, and it was completely unavoidable, but medical wouldn't do anything about it. And the cops it's just super grimy. And then on top of it, I was used to being in a prison where, in Nevada, like white boys, we had a community, like we were deep, and everybody was like, we had each other's backs, and very tight knit and structured. And then I got to the feds, and everybody's like, well, what car are you from? Oh, I'm from Nevada. Oh, those are Nevada boys. Oh, and then we're Cali boys. We run the yard. And, oh, these guys are Oregon guys. And, yeah, like, you guys would, it was like you were still segregated in white boys, but you weren't. Like, it was just, there was no integrity. There wasn't a lot of the code of honorability at all that I was used to. And accountability. There was a lot of accountability in Nevada. Like, you fuck up, and it's getting dealt with. You know, there was a guy that was calling shots from SoCal. He was the rep, California guy that, you know, he's strung out on Suboxone and pills. And there was a guy that had dirty paperwork for children, you know, internet stuff. And normally that gets dealt with, but he was keeping it secret because this guy was paying in Suboxone. And that was just normal.
Would you and Shelley switch or swap prison stories when you guys like first started dating and hanging out? Or like, were you guys curious?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, Shelley just like, what? And she'd tell me, and I'm like, no way was it that chill. She's like, dude, it was amazing. I'm like, you don't even know. You didn't go to prison then. Like, you went to Camp Snoopy or something.
Yeah, because people do that now with people that, like, I've gone on dates with girls who have never been to prison, and they're so curious. Everyone's always asking prison questions, and even guy friends that you make, you know?
Yeah.
But when you have two people come together that have both been in two very different prisons, you know, it's an interesting dynamic, that's for sure.
Definitely. Interesting because she understands, like she's been to jail and understands how that feeling, because no matter what, whether you're a guy or girl, going through that court process and losing your freedom, that's the same.
There's a lot of PTSD, trauma.
I agree. Like, and her and I have talked about it, that I definitely believe I have some from just stuff that I've seen and had to do and be a part of, right? I'm just extremely fortunate that we have gone on this personal development journey together. From, where we were, when we met in the beginning of end of 2016 is when I got out, when we met. We've grown. I've grown. I've got off the pain pills. I had to go to treatment, and we've gone through some stuff, but doing Landmark and going on, we have friends that put on retreat stuff throughout the world, and we've made some really amazing connections. And now we have this tribe of people, like, you would never believe it, man. Like, it's crazy. Like, this guy that was strung out, gun-toting, violent, and now I go on. We just went on our friend's birthday on a week and a half on a yacht throughout Greece and
Bougie
and Turkey, yeah, right. But with people that like really like doing things in the world that I have no qualms about being completely transparent with, and they freaking love me anyway.
That's how you know they're genuine people.
For sure.
How long did it take for you guys to get married?
So we were talking when I was with this ex-girlfriend that I had to parole to her house in San Francisco, and I dealt with that for a while. And Shelley and I were talking like throughout most of that, but then that girl ended up stabbing me in September of 2018, and I was so totally in love with Shelley. Like, I was not. This girl was not for me, right?
Is she blushing right now?
Maybe. But Shelley jokingly, but it's true, like, she said that I don't know if we would be together if you wouldn't have gotten stabbed. Because it just was the catalyst that brought it to the point. I was like, look, like, now I can show my parole officer, like, I can't be living here. She tried to kill me, right? But she stabbed me. And so Shelley and I called our respective parole officers and said, look, we want to live together. We want to have a meeting with you. So Shelley and I go down to the federal building in San Francisco, to the parole office, and we go and meet with our parole officers, and they're both sitting on one side of the desk. It's funny, I was telling this story to a friend of mine last night, but they're sitting there, and Shelley and I are on the other side, and we said, look, like, you know what happened to me? We're in love with each other. Can you please let us live together? Because, it's a violation to even be around each other. And bro, both of them, these two they were just thought it was the funniest thing. They're both smiling. And once we said our spiel, your parole officer, Jennifer, said, in all the time in either one of our careers, we have never had two people come in here and ask permission to live together. It's always they show up for a home visit and they're together and they have to decide, are we going to let them stay like that or violate them, right? So, but we've never had two people come in here and ask permission first. And they agreed to what they did is they put both of us on my parole officer's caseload, and he would come to the house and just check on us both at the same time. And, Shelley's speaking all over the world on, why companies should hire the formerly incarcerated, and we're volunteering in the prisons. So it was all good, right? So that was September 2018. We lived together. We lived in San Francisco for a couple of years, and then we bought a house in Vallejo right before the pandemic. And I had proposed to her in 2020, January. Was that January 2020? We went to Pelican Bay.
I think so. We have it on video.
So we have a video of the proposal.
You guys got to send me that.
Yeah, you got to check it out. So I'll tell you quickly that we went to Pelican Bay with this volunteer program for Hustle 2.0. Love that as Cat and we're on A Yard, B Yard, mainline, Pelican Bay, and we had gone once before to spend the weekend up there with the guys, and so this was my second time. You're like third, I think it was, to go back up there and spend another weekend. And Hustle did a lot of the parole board readiness and interview skills and business plans to like give these guys some of those tools. And so there's a big group of volunteers that we would go up there, probably 100 plus volunteers, a couple hundred guys on each yard in the program, maybe 100, 200 guys on each yard that were part of Hustle. And so I brought the engagement ring with me, and I told a couple guys on A Yard the day before I was thinking about it. And dude, I was so nervous, man. But I loved a lot of those guys, and a lot of those guys are never getting out. Like, it's just hands down, they're not. They've multiple murders, institutional violence. They're, a lot of them had their death sentences commuted to life. They're not ever going to go home. And the only way that I would really be able to share that experience with them is if I did it in there. And so on the last day, the end of the day, I had a couple volunteers that were conspiring with me, and I, got the ring. And at the end of the day, there's a time where we give love bombs, we call it, where anybody can take the mic and share something that happened, to share it with someone, the impact they had on them or how grateful they were, or, just edify each other, right? And so I waited, and I got the mic, and I called Shelley up, and I proposed to her. And dude, I'm telling you right now, like, in that gym, and especially in California, like, the segregation is it's real. But in that moment, none of that shit mattered. Like, you had, tattooed head to toe, black, white, Mexican, it didn't matter. These dudes were hugging, jumping up and down, screaming, crying, tears running down their eyes when I proposed to her. And still to this day, I had no idea what kind of ripple effect it would have. But we still have guys that are getting out here and there, like, that reach out to us all the time, that we try to mentor and help them. That just, I've been told, how much hope and how human they felt in that experience, that me wanting to share that with them like just what it meant to them. And I would have never in a million years imagined that it would have had that kind of impact, right? Because I was thinking like I want to share this with them. I'm thinking I want to get engaged to this woman,
Mhm.
and I would love for them to be a part of it. And it just turned into something so much more, right?
It's like a full circle moment.
Absolutely, it was super cathartic for me too, to be able to just, like you said, it totally full circle. To just, that's the theme. This is who we are. This is what we. This is here's all my ugly stuff, and it's bared to the world to see. And I don't care, because all this ugly stuff is what made me how freaking awesome I am right now. Like, if I didn't have all these scars, how would I be able to appreciate all this amazingness? Like, my life is gorgeous. It's wonderful. It's beautiful, filled with love and friends and experiences and family that I get to appreciate, like, on such a deep, deep level, because I have been to those places and I understand how terrible it really can be. So I have that to compare, right? And but yeah, so from there I think it was 20, so then in Easter 2021 we got married.
That's awesome. What do you do now? We know what Shelley does, but what do you do?
So so when we moved to Sacramento, I decided, I told Shelley, I said, look, I have my business degree and all that. Like, I've always worked with my hands. I love to work with my hands. I was a cabinet maker. My grandfather and my dad were both cabinet makers, and really good ones. And it just, I picked up a lot of that in different trades growing up, and I've always enjoyed it, like, thoroughly. And I told Shelley, I said, look, like, I don't want to, like, work somewhere where I just hate my job. Like, I don't want to work for somebody else anymore. I just want to work for myself. And so I started a small construction company right when we moved to Sacramento. And then my first client was a guy that asked me if I could install some blinds, like window treatment. And that, within a few weeks, turned into me also becoming a partner in his company. And so I'm a partner in a blinds window treatment company. I still have my small construction company, and right now I'm in the process with a couple of friends of creating a sock company, like, cool, wild, designed socks. And so I'm kind of like always open, serial entrepreneur, kind of, just super grateful that I have a lot of these amazing friends to collaborate with and come up with new ideas, and the freedom to be able to travel. And when Shelley has a speaking engagement, because I own my own company, I take it off. I don't have to get time off. I just take off whenever. So I get to go and be like her biggest fan. Like, I'm hands down, I'm Shelley's like biggest fan, dude. It's crazy. I'll meet somebody, and the conversation always turns into be edifying her in some way. I'm like, dude, my wife, like, bro, she was number one computer seller in the world for Microsoft. You know what she did with her quota? You don't even know. She blew her number out the water. Like,
That's so awesome.
I'm very proud of my wife, and I love to get the opportunity to just cheer her on, because her story, as we've all just heard, was, I got to watch her go through all that. So all these little moments that, these victories and these setbacks, like, being present for it, and being that third person, seeing this whole thing go on, it was so miraculous and so big. Like this, like the thing with Microsoft, and winning her job, and then how she got to corporate, and it's supernatural. She used supernatural. It really has been. And then, watching her prepare and go give her TED Talk, and then the PBS article, or the PBS NewsHour show, and then watching her develop Winner Circle with our friend, her business partner, which this, in prison rehabilitative and vocational training program that is in the process right now. It's huge. And I do believe that once we really start, when Winner Circle starts to go more and more, I'll probably transition time into really putting energy into that to help it see its success, because I totally believe in it. It's going to be huge. It's really going to make a big difference in rehabilitative and vocational availability for prisons, especially rural prisons, because of the way that it's set up. Logistics don't really come into play anymore. So,
What do you think is the biggest takeaway you want people to learn from your story and your experience?
That we are not our worst mistakes. And a lot of the time, the one person that is the hardest to see that is ourselves, right? We're completely capable at any moment of choosing a different path. So no matter what has transpired in the past, every moment that we have right now is a new one to completely start over and write a whole new story. Because I did not believe that. I genuinely didn't. And by doing that, I completely shut myself out to any possibility of anything better. But when you do just realize that, hey, look, like, I can do anything. Every moment, anything is possible right at that moment, as long as I believe in it. And then once you believe and you start putting one foot in front of the other, you can completely transform your life and have anything you want, and just have a beautiful life that's not scarred, not marred by what's happened before. It doesn't matter. The past is the past.
I love that. Well, I think we bring Shelley back on to wrap this puppy up, put a bow on it, and tell us about what she's doing now.
Do you want to switch?
Yeah, you guys could switch. How do you think you did?
I think you did great.
Yeah, I think this is so cool that we got these both perspectives into one episode.
Right.
I've never done it before, so I think it's really cool because they both tie in. And how many times you have someone meet at the halfway house and have this whole love story, and you guys are just so supportive of each other and fascinating stories. To wrap it up, I'd love for you to tell the audience what you're doing now, how the audience could help, if anything, and, plug yourself in and go for it. Thank you. There, of course.
Yes. With all the transformation that I've had and the success that I have achieved, I really felt like I had an obligation, and it was my duty to try to do more for the incarcerated and formerly incarcerated community. And when I learned a new way of life, I became empowered, and I figured, who better to start a company that provides rehabilitative programs and tie it all up. It'll be it's a rehabilitative and vocational training program. Who better to do that than somebody that's been incarcerated, somebody who's transformed their life, somebody who understands what's needed because of my lived experience. And so I started a company called Winner Circle. Me and my business partner, Hazel Ortega, incredible woman. She's a self-made millionaire. She wrote a book called From Bounce Checks to Private Jets. And I ended up meeting her on one of these wellness retreats Jeremiah was talking about, and she went all in. She's like, yeah, let's do it. Because her parents were both incarcerated and both passed away due to their addiction. And she feels like, if they would have had access to learn a different way of life and a different way of being and thinking, that they might still be here today. So she partnered with me to start the company, Winner Circle. Obviously, it's a play off my last name.
I love it. It's a
Yeah.
great last name.
Yeah. So
Does that come from him or is that your maiden?
that's my maiden.
Okay.
Yeah. So I didn't.
Don't
I
ever
told
give
her-
that
I
up.
told her you can hyphenate it, but you better keep
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a crazy last name.
Right.
But Dupree Winner is good too, right? Is that how you guys do it?
Winner Dupre.
Winner Dupree. Okay,
yeah.
that's how you guys do it. Okay.
Yeah. So the thing that I wanted to tackle and what sets my program apart from other programs was, how do we get rehabilitation to the masses? How do we scale this? Because these little local programs or these volunteers that bring in these programs they're not really scaling. I mean, they might be in 2, 3, 4, 5 prisons, but they're not in every prison. And I just thought, the only way to scale this is on the tablets. And people love masterclass. I know whenever I have trainings that I have to do at work, I do video trainings. And I thought, you know what, why don't we just take these rehabilitative teachings, whether it's a class on forgiveness or a class on anger management or a class on emotional intelligence or a class on resume writing or whatever, right? And we create this, it's this holistic program where we cover everything, but we really go into like the woo-woo too. And I use the term woo-woo, the spiritual stuff, the meditation, the breath work. We teach these concepts and ideas to the incarcerated community that they probably were not exposed to, so that we can ultimately elevate the frequency of which they operate on, so that they can then live the life of their dreams, right? And so by doing this through the videos and filming and having different content, creators come and experts in whatever field they're experts in, like a breath work, guru come in and teach a class on breath work, right? And do this we're doing this rehabilitative program and then scaling it on the tablets. And so now everybody has access to rehabilitation, even the most remote prisons. But the goal of Winner Circle is to really deal with the root there's a root cause of the incarceration. And it's always from the past. It's some type of trauma. It's there, there's something there. It was the environment they grew up in, right? But dealing with that root cause of the incarceration, getting them categorically more whole as an individual, dealing with some of these issues, and then helping them look at it from a different perspective, right? Because we can't change the past, but we can help them grow and look at it from a more positive perspective and find silver lining. And I think that's where the healing comes from, right? And then being able to forgive, right? And teaching them about forgiveness. But then once we deal with the root cause of the incarceration through these various programs and various videos that we record, at the very end, we will also teach a 3-month course on sales. Because I'm a firm believer, I'm also biased, but I'm a firm believer that if you can get good at sales, you can do well at anything in life. Everything is literally sales. When I'm trying to talk my husband into going to eat at a restaurant that he doesn't want to eat at, I have to tell him on the idea, like, hey, we should go because, it's amazing. And they got 4-star or 5 stars.
Oh, you're one of those.
Yeah. So everything is really about sales. When you go into for a job interview, you're selling yourself to get, and hopefully they'll hire you. And so that's just a skill that I know is super valuable. And so, yeah, Winner Circle, we rehabilitate the individual. We get them categorically more whole. We deal with the root cause of, the incarceration, and then we move on to the vocational training. And then we teach them skills that so when they get out, they'll get a certificate. And then we work with employers to, make sure that they're implementing fair chance hiring. Work with companies that have like entry-level sales positions and help them reintegrate into society and get them doing, they're natural born hustlers anyways, right?
I always say that every
Yeah.
drug dealer I've ever interviewed, and a lot of guys that have went to prison have converted their prison hustles into
100%.
some type of prison. I interviewed a guy that did like 25 years, and he was braiding in prison. Now he has a successful hair braiding business.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. But there's no resources on the federal level or the state level in the reentry houses
Yeah.
because they all don't even want you to get into entrepreneurship because the probation officers aren't even trained
Yeah.
to handle. How do you look at the accounting? How do you do any of that? You
Yeah.
know? Yeah, they can only read pay stubs. That's
Yeah.
all they know how to do. And
Yeah.
that's a huge problem because that causes so many issues.
Yeah.
I think they even need to retrain it on that level too. Train the probation officers or change that
Yeah.
whole aspect, you know?
And that's another aspect of Winner's Circle that we were talking about that we want to implement as well, because it's one thing to train, to rehabilitate the incarcerated community, but we also need to help the parole officers and the ones the staff, right? And get them, because, at the end of the day, they're humans. They've been, at the end of the day, we all need help, right?
Absolutely.
And training them to make the prison environment not so toxic, right? And so it's dealing with them too as well. One of my teammates, Burke Brown, he's an international speaker. He's incredible, but he went to Berkeley and graduated cum laude and did his thesis on intrinsic and extrinsic motivation and what really truly motivates people to change, and that's when they find purpose, right? And he helps. He does like these talks all over, and he speaks with government officials and I think he's even spoken with police, and so he is already well versed in this, right? And so who better to have him take on that responsibility or role. So yeah, we've definitely had talks about that and integrating that as part of our program.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
We have a website.
We'll put that in the description too. Yeah, you could
Yeah.
say it, but we'll also have it in the description for everyone.
Yeah, winnercircleus.com. And, I think one of the things is we just want to provide rehabilitation, and we want to scale it. And we want to help change the world. We want to revolutionize the way rehabilitation is done today, and help, be able to help every individual that needs it, whether you're in a remote level 4, max security prison, but you can still have access to programming. So that's the whole reason why I wanted to start it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you so much for coming
Yeah.
today. This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Definitely my longest interview to date,
Yeah.
which is really cool. I'm glad we got to do this.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this will live up there on YouTube forever, your guys' testimony and story, which is really cool. And I'm excited to see where you guys go, and safe travels back.
Yes, thank you.